This story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah, rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds, away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because in the 70s I was in floods of tears. As the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6, and it is, of course, another glorious day to be alive. It's Wednesday, the 16th of April. Get up and get out there, because if you haven't done it yet, you need to. It's very, very windy. It's not very warm, and Easter is approaching. In fact, just the day after tomorrow, it's going to be Bank Holiday Friday. As, of course, you would know, it's called Good Friday. We're still awaiting Keir Starmer's healthy message to all Christians at Easter. So far, we don't know whether he's still on holiday, where he's on holiday, and what he plans to do about when he's coming back. What we do know, though, is we have got a summer of discontent looming, ladies and gentlemen. It looks as though the unions are starting to flex their muscles. It looks as though the Birmingham bin strike could be just the beginning. Just 41 bin men, apparently, are involved in that. But the militant unions are fighting that strike from miles and miles away. An awful lot of the people, one of whom we're going to have on the show a little bit later on, are basically orchestrating the entire industrial dispute from London. And points south, east, north and west of Birmingham. They're not actually there to do the dirty work. Birmingham, meanwhile, continues to pour into the sky. Horrible smells, rodents everywhere, rats everywhere, foxes everywhere. Serious health hazard. Even the Daily Mirror has got a front page this morning saying, sort out this mess. They don't actually say who should be sorting it out, but they know exactly, as well as I do, that it should be, of course, sorted out by the government. Angela Rayner seems to have left them all to their own devices. She's been in receipt of money from Unite. Half of the Birmingham Council and members of Unite are involved in the strike. So one thing they should do at Unite is, guess what? Unite! And actually sort out the bleeding problem. 0344 499 1000. We'll be talking about Keir Starmer's EU reset as well, because apparently he wants to drag us even further back into the European Union. Well, why wouldn't he? This is the same guy who wanted to go against the benefits and the good things about our democratic decision to leave the European Union. He wanted a second referendum, remember? For ages and ages and ages, when he was the shadow Brexit secretary of the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn, and he now wants to get us even closer back in to the EU. Well, I don't think we want to do that, do we? Lord Daniel Hannan joins us later on. He's going to say the EU doesn't care about our food safety or indeed about our country. We're also, of course, going to be looking into all manner of stories involving various different points of the news, including 30 attacks on jail officers each and every day. The latest from Scunthorpe on the steel deal. Apparently Jonathan Reynolds is going to go to Beijing, which doesn't exactly bode well for not expressing our strong links with China. And teachers have basically called the Reform Party racist. That is more or less what the news is today. We'll be talking about that, plus an awful lot more. Theo Usherwood's here to help us look through the morning papers. Theo, very good morning to you. We shall be back with more right after this on Morning Glory. Welcome to Wednesday, 5 minutes past 6, and if you're not, as I say, up and about, you must indeed now do so. Starmer's EU reset risks the US trade deal, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, because, of course, Keir Starmer is now closing on a new partnership with the European Union that could put a trade deal with the White House at risk, they say. I mean, we always knew that Starmer, in his heart of hearts, wants to be part of the European Union. He always said, we will not be rejoining. Yes. But the fact that he actually said it, it slightly worries me that he would want to rejoin it.
So look, what he's going to do, what Keir Starmer's going to do, and we knew this was looming, is that he wants closer trading links with the European Union. So what he's going to do is, for food and veterinary standards, he's just going to sign up to EU rules in perpetuity.
Yeah.
So if they decide to change their rules in Brussels, we're going to just follow suit. We're not going to argue about it. We're not going to debate it. We're just going to follow suit.
Yeah.
And that means that we can export our foods and pharmaceuticals and all of our goods into agriculture, into the European Union, and we don't need to have any checks. And
so there won't be any sausage tax or anything like that?
No bureaucracy, none of that messing around, and we're just going to export it all to the European Union. It's going to be fine. Except, of course, Donald Trump was actually, and J.D. Vance just said it a couple of days ago, they like the idea of Britain actually striking a trade deal with the White House. And Donald Trump, for his part, and J.D. Vance, they're going to want some deal for American food producers so that they can export American foods into this country. And if you don't want chlorinated chicken, you don't have to have it.
Right.
But they're going to want to sell it.
But we can have chlorinated salad.
We have chlorinated salad, exactly.
The lefties don't ever mention that, do they?
No.
They always go, oh, chlorinated chicken. Oh, I mean, I don't remember buying any American food really in Britain.
No.
You know, I remember when the Sun did a big spread on it a couple of weeks ago. You know, these are the things that come in from America, things like peanut butter and various different things. Most of which I don't believe many people will buy in any great numbers, really.
No.
You know?
But the problem is, of course, for Donald Trump and for that aspect of the trade deal. And Keir Starmer said he wants to sit on the fence, basically. He wants to keep you happy and America happy. But Donald Trump's not going to not going to be able to do it.
No, he likes the idea of punishing the European Union, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
I mean, he has said they do a great job. He has said that, you know, they were basically formed to damage America and to punish America and not to be friendly to America. So he doesn't want Britain to be aligned with them, does he?
And if we're aligned with them, and he's not, he you know, just from a practicalities point of view, he's not going to be able to get what he wants on food standards because we're going to have to say, sorry, Donald Trump. We've signed up to these EU rules and we can't do a deal. And that's the problem.
I mean, more worrying for us should be really that the rules which they set, which we then follow, could change.
Yeah, they could change whatever they like.
And they could change the rules to the detriment of the UK.
Absolutely.
And we, having signed up to them, would just have to go along with them.
Yes, and we don't have any say in it.
Which is the reason we left the EU in the first place.
Yes, it is, Mike. Yes.
So, you know, what's he doing, and why is he doing it?
Well, he's doing it because he says, well, he wants to get rid of all the bureaucracy that big businesses feel that they face when they're trying to get goods into the European Union, and he wants closer trading alliance with the European Union. That's his reasoning.
Yes.
But of course, you're quite right. They're going to set the rules. They're going to change the rules. They can do whatever they like with the rules, and we just have to go along with the rules.
Right. And that is exactly what people voted to stop happening, because we wish to have people who tell us what the rules are, democratically elected by the people in this country, not a bunch of faceless bureaucrats in the European Union.
We're not going to, if this goes through, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to set the rules, and we're just going to have to go.
And what if their rules say that we have to block American products? As the Telegraph suggests?
Then we will have to block American products.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's mad.
It's at this particular time when we are trying to strike a trade deal, and what you have to also realise, Mike, is that when Trump is talking about a trade deal, okay, we're just talking about food here, but lumped in with that will be the 25% tariff on our cars as well.
Yeah.
So we could say, okay, we accept your food, but then we want some relief so we can get our Rolls Royces and our Jaguar Land Rovers and our Aston Martins exported into the United States.
Right.
So it's not just, don't just look at this. You listeners shouldn't just look at this in terms of food. There's a whole host of things that could be loaded.
And the Americans
into it
in the last few days have said there's a likelihood that the car tariff, for example, would be relaxed.
Yes.
For Britain.
For Britain.
But not for Europe.
No, but Donald Trump, if he can't get his deal on food, then his trade negotiations are going to say, well, why should we help you out?
Yeah, exactly.
And the Times has a splash. Their front page story is on pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
We export billions of pounds of
apparently
pharmaceuticals.
half of I think it's Pfizer's about £20 billion, which is about half of their profit, comes out of access to America.
Yes, and these are highly skilled. These are good jobs.
Yeah.
But yes, we could, Donald Trump could secure us a car.
And so here we are with Starmer once again sort of hurling himself in front of a train that he doesn't need to hurl himself in front of. Why don't you just stay standing on the platform and let the train go by?
Yes.
No, this is Keir Starmer's kind of modus operandi, isn't it? He can't see an opportunity to make things worse and not take it.
No, you would look. Just let the EU go for a minute. It's as it is.
Yeah.
Don't sign up to
this
any
is not
rules.
the time to be doing these negotiations, is it? Is what you're saying?
Well, and look towards pharmaceuticals, the car industry. Those are really important. Those are highly skilled jobs that affect this country.
Yeah.
And whether it be in the Midlands or in the Southeast with pharmaceuticals, and those are the jobs we want to keep, and those are the jobs we can grow and get more jobs into those industries if we can secure that carve out with the United States. But Donald Trump isn't going to give us that if we suddenly align ourselves with the European Union. Because, as you say, Mike, he hates the European Union.
It seems like madness to me. I've got a piece in the Telegraph today about Starmer and the fact that he's facing this meltdown on May the 1st in the local elections because of the Sun stuff that appeared yesterday. Amongst many other things, which show that there's been a huge shift from Labour supporting people in the Red Wall to reform. And this is going to make it even worse, isn't it? I mean, this is going to make everyone. So basically, anyone and everyone who wanted to leave the European Union is going to say, "Well, no thanks, but no thanks."
Yeah, you betrayed us.
Yeah.
You let us down. You went back on. You went back on your
word.
He always said it was a red line for Labour that we wouldn't join the single market or the customs union.
And he's now inching back towards doing it.
And he's putting us, the customs union, the rule, particularly the rules on the food and pharmaceuticals and food and veterinary, and the alignment there. That's the customs union in all but name.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the other big story, which is going to come and slap him very hard in the face, I think, whenever he comes back from holiday, is Britain is now facing a summer of discontent, according to the Telegraph. Union leaders laying the groundwork for widespread strikes, and that includes the NHS, civil servants, university staff, teachers, could all be staging walkouts over paid job cuts and working conditions in the coming months. We already heard yesterday that there are bin strikes possibly looming in places like Cambridgeshire, in Yorkshire apparently, and in all other parts of the country as well. And Unite have said that could well be happening. We predicted this again, as soon as Labour got in, because as soon as they gave money to the train drivers, as soon as they gave money to junior doctors and nurses and all of the public sector workers, they gave the teachers a pay rise. They're not happy. They'll go away and go on strike and come back for more money, and they'll probably get it.
Yeah, and if you look at the issue around the bins, right, the Unite look at this as a huge success. They've managed to grind, Birmingham just turned it into to get exactly what they want.
A pigsty.
A
midden, as we would say in Scotland.
And they've got exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And now they could just say, so well, we've created chaos here, and we could create chaos in any other city that we want to do. And Labour should have just nipped this in the bud. They should have seen this one coming. Because, of course, the accusation, and this is a fair accusation from the Tories, Andrew Griffiths makes it at the bottom of that article on the front page of the Telegraph.
Yeah.
£31 million to union donations since Starmer became leader.
Right.
That's the number.
31 million.
31 million.
Yeah.
So the reason that the government doesn't, the Labour government, doesn't want to step in and condemn the trade unions is because the trade unions gave them money.
Yeah.
And actually, in this particular, they've turned Birmingham. It's like a public health.
Oh, it's really it's not enough.
People are going to start getting really sick.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting piece. In fact, we can speak to this guy Onay Kassab, who's the Unite Union leader, who apparently lives in southeast London, and basically they're quoting from him, and also Sharon Graham, who's Unite's general secretary, the most prominent voice during the strike, which is now in its 6th week, basically saying that they're directing, these militants are directing this bin strike from suburbs miles and miles away from Birmingham. They're not actually there in Birmingham, where the havoc is being wreaked. And basically then they got another piece in the Mail today in which they say Angela Rayner is about to hand even more power to the unions over the course of the next few weeks and months because of this workers' rights bill, where they'll be able to go on strike quicker, they'll be able to go on strike for longer, and they'll be able to go on strike with less of a kind of mandate from their members, you know. And we've got page one of The Guardian. So this is, you might not think, oh, these stories aren't linked. Largest teaching union describes Reform UK as far right and racist, and they've got this is a National Education Union delegate from Nottingham saying we must call this is Reform out as a racist party and we must campaign against them. Right. This is the campaign. These strikes, the chaos in Birmingham, is a campaign for Reform UK. This is what they want. Because then they get to turn around and say, well, this is a Labour government. This is what Keir Starmer said he was coming in to stop. That's why he was explicit, and Rachel Reeves were explicit last summer, end of last July, when they said we're going to give £10 billion to public sector which they then did.
So we end this chaos.
It's one of the few promises they actually kept.
Yeah, they gave the money to the trade unions, and what do we have? We have chaos. To end this type of chaos, to keep the country moving. And it is a campaign for
And it'll be a revolving door, basically, because as soon as one union gets paid off, another union turns up at the door and knocks and says, can we have a pay rise? I mean, this is what happens with the train unions. First it was ASLEF, then it was the RMT, and then it goes back to ASLEF again. You know, it's like a game of ping pong. And all the time they're getting more and more money. Sarah Vine's written a piece in the Mail today. Who's really running Britain? Starmer, all the unions. Big picture of piles and piles of rubbish in Birmingham. Looking at the mess in Birmingham, it's all too clear. So we're back to the 70s again, which is what we've been saying for a while, with the unions running the country.
It's not the winter of discontent of 1979. It's the summer of discontent
of 25. 25. And I mean, how soon before, for example, we have problems with the power stations and suddenly power cuts, and suddenly we get power station staff walking out, and then we go really back to the 70s with the 3-day week, and people sitting around in the dark because they haven't got any candles. And they haven't got any power, and they can't heat their homes, and they can't heat their water. I mean, that's where we're looking, I'm afraid. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, people. It's only 17 minutes past 6. I was hoping for a slightly more cheery message, but, I'm afraid the summer of discontent is looming. And speaking of which, let's have a look at Jonathan Reynolds, the new boss of British Steel, laughably, the fake solicitor, who's found himself on the most incredible career curve upwards you've ever seen. He's now running one of the biggest industrial organisations in Europe, right? British Steel. Here's what he had to say in Scunthorpe yesterday.
These blast furnaces have given this country nearly a century of service in one case, so they know they need the future, and that might be a different model, different technology. What they didn't want was the unplanned, uncontrolled shutdown of the blast furnaces with thousands of job losses and no plan in place for the future. And by what we've been able to do, working with the brilliant team here at British Steel, is secure the possibility of that better future, and I, for one, am confident that we've made the right decision to support the people here.
In one of the pieces describing his visit there yesterday, apparently he went and they sort of put him in protective clothing and let him take some steel, molten steel, out of the furnace, right? And he actually said, it was so hot I thought I was going to melt. And you go, what do you think it was going to be like? You're standing in the middle of a steel furnace, you complete plonker.
Yeah, look, it's and of course.
By the way, he's going to China later on in the year because he's now gone back on the situation where they said, "Well, we think it was a bad idea to get the Chinese involved." He's going to China to negotiate a new partner for the steel business.
Well, it beggars belief, and of course the coal, the coal that of course fuels these furnaces, and these furnaces can't. I didn't realise this. Once they're switched off, that's sort of
if they go out, literally, you can't restart them.
And the part of the crisis that we found ourselves in with Scunthorpe is that we can't get the coal in.
Yeah.
As a friend of mine who works in oil and gas sent me a message, with a link to an article going back to just last September, in fact, we had the opportunity to get our own coal, a deep coal mine in Whitehaven in Cumbria. Guess what happened?
They shut it.
They shut it.
Yeah.
Friends of the Earth.
And funnily enough,
campaign.
when I was talking to James Murray the other day from the Office of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, he said that the coal, this is the Labour line, which is wrong, by the way, the coal and the coke that comes out of that Cumbrian mine is not suitable for the blast furnaces in Scunthorpe. It's not true. It is entirely suitable, and the reason why they keep not mentioning the word coal or coke, and they keep saying raw materials, is they don't want anyone to be reminded of it. And some bozo in the press office or in the special advisors room has said, just don't say the word coal, just keep saying raw materials, and that's what they keep doing. And it's like, I mean, so they think we're idiotic here. So they think we're that stupid. Also, the other problem is that, you know, with the state of play going on with the coal that was being shipped in from Japan, nobody knows what happened to that, because we were told, do you remember, just in the lead up to the deal that was done yesterday, that the coal was on a ship coming from Japan, and everyone was going, why are you importing it from Japan? It now turns out that the coal that we got came from America, and there's some other coal coming from Australia. So what's happened to the Japanese coal?
Don't know.
Is it just sitting there somewhere in the middle of the North Sea?
And the carbon footprint of putting all of this coal onto a ship and then shipping it, whether it be across the Atlantic,
halfway around the world.
Halfway around the world from Japan.
Through the Panama Canal, you know, who knows?
Through the Suez Canal to this country is, you know, there are polar bears dying because of this decision to close this coal mine. It's just, we could just put it on a lorry from Whitehaven.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Just, you know, dig what's underneath your feet. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable. One piece of good news for you. He's got this from Sean, who says, "Good morning, Mike. So yet again, Keith Starmer categorically tells us there's no way he'll go against Brexit, but like everything else he says, he actually does the polar opposite. He stands by waspy women, then ignores them. He's on the side of farmers, and then he screws them too. I'm bloody furious." I'm not surprised. Paul from Kent says the UK has a known source of 3.57 billion tonnes of coal under our feet and up to 187 billion tonnes undiscovered. We could still mine coal within the net zero crazy scheme, mine the coal and supply essential industry until we prove alternative methods. Once we've proved that, we no longer need to operate with coal. We simply export the excess. Well, it's a very good point. And one from Brian, one piece of good news here, right? He says, "Morning, Mike, great show. I'm waiting with bated breath for my bumper sticker from the Home of Common Sense. I've just seen one on eBay for 500 quid. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, these things are like gold dust, I tell you. We are going to have to print some more. I've told them we're going to print some more. We're currently in an argument about whether we print some more, but we will get there. We will do it. It's 22 minutes past 6. This is Talk.
I've given up soothsaying because I'm not very good at it. But what I will tell you is what we need to take a pace back. And yep, you see the polling telling us that reform is ahead, and you see the others all struggling around, and the Conservative Party too. The worst thing is Labour, of course, who are in a position that I've never seen a government go into within about a year of their time, which is so low you could slide a snake under it. But the main thing is that reform, at the end of it all, is a protest vote.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:24. I'm Mike Graham. Theo Usherwood's here with us. We are going to be going through the papers in full this morning, right here until 7 o'clock. We've got a voice note first up from Phil on chlorinated chicken.
Good morning, Mike. Phil from Hertfordshire. Mike, on the subject of chlorinated chicken, slightly off kilter here, I found an apple in the back of my van the other day. It had been in there several weeks because I remember putting my lunch bag in there. Do you know what, mate? I could have still ate it. It was still in good condition. So what the hell have they done to that to make that last that long? And people worry about chlorinated chicken. I think we need to worry about what they're doing to their own food in this country. Great show.
Yeah, Phil, I think you make a very good point. You know, you can buy vegetables now that never go off, can't you? I mean, you can keep them literally for weeks on end.
I've tested it.
And you must know that there's something slightly awry about that. You know, that's a chemically treated apple or a chemically treated carrot or something, right?
Yeah, you know, you get fresh vegetables or whatever whenever, you put them in the fridge and then they go in, a week or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can get
I mean, we had this chlorinated chicken argument. I mean, it takes you back to sort of 2016, doesn't it? Before the referendum was even a result, and people went on and on and on about how we're all going to be poisoned by American food. Well, you know, if you've been to America, I've been to America. The food's pretty good, actually. You know, whether it's chlorinated or not, I don't really care.
And you can make a choice. Consumers can make a choice. So you can export. They can bring in the chicken, and I'm sure they'll say, you know, this chicken is American. You have made in America, and consumers, if they don't want to eat it, they don't have to eat it. If people want to get worked up and upset about it,
and I've never seen in a supermarket chicken that was made in America, and I don't imagine that if it suddenly started appearing, that people would suddenly rush to buy it.
You wouldn't see people. I mean, maybe in Waitrose you'd see people like studying where their chicken's from, but I'm sure if you go to, you know, Sainsbury's.
I mean, let's not forget Tesco's once invented an entire farm, didn't they, which didn't exist, and put this stamp of a farm on all of their products that made people think, oh, that's good. It's been made on this really nice little farm, you know, mummy and daddy farmer and their little kids and their little goats, and, you know, it's really, really nice. When in fact, it was a complete and utter construct of fabrication, of nonsense, you know. But as long as you put farm on it, everybody goes, oh, that's cool. Wow, must be farm reared, and it must be free range. It must be great. Speaking of fakery, how about the front page of the Daily Mail? China is handed access to NHS medical records, despite MI5 fears that health data could be misused in Beijing. I mean, so China is a real problem, isn't it?
I don't quite. I'm not sure what the strategy is when it comes to dealing with China. It's like the ultimate frenemy, where they keep on like doing bad stuff to us. We keep on saying, let's be friends.
And we keep having politicians, and thankfully there are plenty of politicians like Ian Duncan Smith who say, you know, these are dangerous people. It's a dangerous regime. It's a communist overlord that would like to take over the world and is basically taking over the world. We shouldn't be helping them to do it.
Yeah, Ian Duncan Smith, by the way, Ian Duncan Smith, I should say, has been sanctioned along with a handful of other Conservative MPs for speaking up against China. We saw what happened to Vera Hobhouse, the Liberal Democrat MP, just wanted to go and see her grandson, but she's criticised China. She's not allowed into...
Yeah, but she's a bit... she's like these two idiotic Labour MPs who went to Israel and didn't think they would have any kind of comeback.
I completely agree with that stance.
She should have known better. In the end, I mean, we could try and dictate to Hong Kong and say you should let everybody in that we tell you to let in. But, you know, unbelievable. There are some countries who actually have limits on who's allowed into their country.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is not, Mike. This is not a friendly regime.
No.
Of course, we've decided not to place China, despite protestations, perfectly legitimate protestations from senior MPs like Sir Ian Duncan Smith. It's not on the same list as Iran or in Russia. They are trying to promote economic growth and cooperation with China. Rachel Reeves has already been out to China.
Well, Lammy's been there, Rachel Reeves has been there. There's a whole bunch of Labour cabinet members that have been there, and now Jonathan Reynolds is going to go.
And if you look at, there are concerns whether it be, allowing Chinese companies with links, or supposed links to the Chinese state to build parts of our infrastructure, whether that be our 5G network. And of course, now the story in the front page of the Mail is that Chinese researchers are going to be granted access to NHS medical records. So this is, of course, despite MI5 fears that the health data could be misused by Beijing. And this is going to be, the information is being uploaded to the central database of the UK Biobank, a research hub that makes data available to universities, scientific institutes and private companies.
Right. And funny enough, Ian Duncan Smith's quoted in the story. He said to the Mail last night, "It's an outrageous situation. China is an unfriendly country, and there should be a complete ban on any further NHS data going there. It can use medical data to develop drugs and give itself a competitive advantage, or to understand our genetic makeup and develop targeted weapons."
Yeah, I mean, China.
I mean, that sounds a bit dangerous, doesn't it?
Yeah. China doesn't need, you know, in terms of how fast China is growing, it doesn't need any leg ups. You know, China, I mean, is an economic, it's a powerhouse. I mean, we're not even really a competitor.
Well, because we haven't been paying very much attention, over the past 20 or so years, they've completely colonised Africa. Remember, they moved into Afghanistan after the Americans moved out, because all the lithium that sits underneath the Kabul airport. In fact, they took it over literally within about 12 hours of the Americans leaving. You know, they've also got loads and loads of interests in South America. You know, they know exactly where all the sort of the precious minerals are in the world, and they own most of them.
Yeah, and they go in and they move very quickly, and they move with huge amounts of money to gain influence. I remember I visited South Africa, 15, 16 years ago, and I was taken out for a very nice dinner, and as we walked past to the private room or whatever, there was a huge delegation all sitting around dinner of South African businessmen and Chinese, and they were just doing a deal at dinner for South Africa, and they would make no bones.
And nobody has stopped them, and nobody has paid any attention to it, and it's happened, and they've basically taken over at least 2/3 of the world. And I don't see why they should have their hands on any data of ours, and that we should give them or sell them willingly. Absolutely not. Let's have a look at something slightly less serious. Yesterday we had a lot of fun with the rockets to space with Katy Perry and her feminine group of, as they were described by the BBC, 5 crew members of a rocket. They were not members of a rocket crew. All they were passengers, basically, on a 4-minute jolly into space. But a lot of people have been critical of them, right? Including the model, Emily Ratajkowski. Let's have a look at what she has to say.
At the space mission this morning, that's intense. Like, this is beyond parody. Saying that you care about Mother Earth and it's about Mother Earth, and you're going up in a spaceship that is built and paid for by a company that's single-handedly destroying the planet. Look at the state of the world and think about how many resources went into putting these women into space. For what? For what was the marketing there? And then to try to make it like, I'm disgusted, literally, I'm disgusted.
Yeah, it's not going well in the old world of femininity, is it? They're all having to go at each other, fighting like cats in a sack. And here's a response from Gail King, who was one of the women who went up there.
This is what bothers me, because I've certainly read some of the things online, coming from people that I know, that I like, that I consider friends. And this is what I would say to that. Space is not an either or, it's a both and. And because you do something in space, doesn't mean you're taking anything away from Earth. And what you're doing in space is trying to make things better here on Earth. What Blue Origin wants to do is take the waste here and figure out a way to put it in space to make our planet cleaner. I mean, Jeff Bezos has so many ideas, and the people that are working there are really devoted and dedicated to making our planet a better place. That's number one. Number two, have you been? Have you been? If you've been and you still feel that way after you come back, please let's have a conversation. Number three, please don't call it a ride. That is not a friggin' ride. Whenever a man goes up, you have never said to an astronaut, boy, what a ride. You know, we duplicated the same trajectory that Alan Shepard did back in the day, pretty much. No one called that a ride. It was called a flight. It was called a journey, because a ride implies that it's something frivolous or something that's lighthearted. There was nothing frivolous about what we did, and the machine that we were on, and what it took for the people to get that machine up and running, to get us up and get us back down safely. So, you know, I'm very disappointed and very saddened by it. And I also say this. What it's doing to inspire other women and young girls, please don't ignore that. I've had so many women and young girls reach out to me, and men too, by the way, men too, that say, wow, I never thought I could.
Well, that was quite a long rant, wasn't it, by Gayle King? Has she been listening to Keir Starmer? Women and young girls have been inspired by what I did. She was up there for 4 minutes. 4 minutes.
I just think it's a bit... She said... The bit that struck me was that she said, well, have you ever been to space? Well, if you haven't been to space, you can't talk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Nobody else can have an opinion.
It's like the old talk sport conversation we used to have, that if you never played professional football, you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, really? OK, then, well, let's just not have a radio station then. But, you know, it's so impossibly pompous, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to go up into space, maybe, but I don't have a spare 250,000 quid. And I'm not a mate of Jeff Bezos' wife either.
Yeah. So you can't... But then you can't have a conversation.
But this is typical of the sort of the state of the narcissistic society that we live in, right? That these people think that what they've done is available for everybody to do, and they think that nobody should be critical of them because they've done a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Women and young girls are looking up to us. No, they're not. You didn't do anything in space, and if your sole reason for going up there is to go check it out and see whether you can take some rubbish up there, well, great news for Birmingham Council. Maybe they should start a space programme, and maybe they'd get rid of the Birmingham rubbish that way.
Oh, yeah.
It's pathetic, isn't it?
It's just... It seems like... It really did... To me, it seemed frivolous.
It was frivolous.
I don't know.
It was clearly frivolous.
I don't... Nobody's been able to explain to me what research they've done.
They haven't done anything.
Or what they've done.
No.
I don't know.
It's a jolly. They basically went up there. They were in space.
They must have done some research. Have you not read somewhere they've done some research?
They were in space for 4 minutes. I mean, you know, Katy Perry's got songs longer than that.
Yeah, OK.
I mean, I say that, but I'm talking about the 12-inch disco remix, obviously. Hear Me Roar, I presume. I don't know how long it is. But it's probably nearly 4 minutes long. Anyway, I've never listened to it all the way through.
You could listen to a couple of songs on the trip.
This is just put Led Zeppelin on. It goes for 12 minutes.
Right.
You know, and then you're really talking.
We could do 3 trips for that.
6:35. You want to go to the moon? It feels like it might be a better place than Earth at the moment. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37, 6:38 actually. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up. We've just had to close the blinds here in the studios because it's so bright. It's beautiful out there, but it's bleeding windy. I nearly got blown out of the cab when I got out of it this morning. But anyway, wherever you are, make sure that you look out the window before you go out. And don't take an umbrella today because it will just blow inside out. We've got a new voice note from Linda.
Great show. Linda from Worcestershire here. Talking about chlorinated chicken. So we have salad washed in chlorinated water in the UK. And what about everybody who goes swimming in the swimming pool, which is treated with chlorine? What's the difference? We swim in it, half of it ends up being swallowed, whatever. Don't see the problem.
No, I really don't see the problem either. I mean, and the reason why you know it's not a problem is the people who say it's a problem are the people that you don't listen to, who are all the kind of, FBPE, lefty, Remainer types who can't get over the fact that the country was betrayed and voted to leave the European Union. Nearly 10 years ago, by the way. I mean, it's almost been a 10-year journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, 10,
which is ridiculous.
9 years ago.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's practically, and it will be a decade soon. If you're rounding up, as
rounding
people
up
like
is fair to do.
Rounding up, it's practically a decade, and we're still talking about chlorinated chicken. I mean, it's pathetic, really. Let's talk about the banter ban at work, because peers are kind of trying and block it. Apparently, this is the new Labour workers' rights overhaul, which includes if you work in a pub and somebody says something which is not even directed at you, but it's something that you hear or overhear by accident, you can complain to the management and tell that person that they have to be kicked out of the pub.
Yes, and this was first reported in January, where the pubs could ban customers from speaking about contentious beliefs such as religious views or transgender rights. And this is, of course, as you say, part of Angela Rayner's workers' rights reforms. Now, Lord Young of Acton, that's Toby Young to most people, but he's the founder of course, the Free Speech Union. He's tabled an amendment to remove that requirement within the workers' rights legislation, and he hopes to tweak to the laws so that opinions on political, moral and religious or social matters are exempt, as long as they are not indecent.
Because who on earth is going to police what you say in a pub or in a restaurant or in a
under this pub landlords will be expected to do exactly that. And I think that's the dangerous aspect of it, if that's the word to use, that pub landlords are going to be expected to step in and say to individual customers, no, you can't say that. I've just had Bobby Jones down the end of the bar, he overheard you, and he thinks that's offensive, and we can't have that.
Yeah, but that would be, I mean, as if they're not already trying to kill off the pub business in the best possible way that they can, with a lot of pubs closing at 9 p.m. now because there's not enough business to keep them open, a lot of people not being around on Mondays and Fridays, they don't go to work anymore. The pub business is already teetering on the edge. This will kill it off altogether.
I think in most pubs up and down the land, I think common sense will prevail. And I think most landlords and most clientele will just go, forget it. But of course, what it will do is open the door for malicious complaints. People who really want to do it.
But this is the problem, because there are people, I'm afraid, in this country who are busybodies. There are people who have been, brought up, and I don't wish to sort of tar Gen Xers with, or Gen Zers rather, with all of this. But there will be, some of these young people, snowflake types, who can't listen to certain things being said, and who will complain. And they don't like working to begin with, and then when they suddenly go to work and hear something they don't want to hear, they'll be, you can imagine the chaos this is going to cause.
That's a very good point, because of course a lot of the Gen Zers will work behind the bar, and then they might hear something they don't like. Yes, and I guess that this is a particular problem. I don't imagine that Lord Young is going to get his amendment through. I think probably knowing that it's him proposing it, I just don't think he will get the support he needs in the House of Lords, and the government has got and even they've got such a large majority in the Commons that even if he was to get it over the line, then the legislation will come back to the House of Commons, and then MPs will just vote.
But this is the kind of madness of this Angela Rayner workers' rights bill, isn't it? Because it wasn't. I mean, it's meant to protect workers' rights. I think anybody sensible would go, okay, well that seems fair enough, so that people can't be exploited, they can't be made to work long hours without being paid a reasonable amount of money, they can't be made to work overtime and all of that.
Now you've got to have the right opinion.
But once you get to the place where you're going, and they can stop people from talking about certain subjects they don't like. That's just ridiculous.
And the cost of the economy.
Nonsense.
You raised the point about pub industry being on the edge. The wider cost of the economy of this particular piece of legislation is put at £5 billion at a time where we have a real problem with economic growth in this country. People just aren't setting up businesses, taking on new people, and expanding. And that's that's right. and the government wants more
and how about this?
Tax.
How's it going to work in schools, right? Because we've got a talk exclusive here, which we're going to unveil to you, which we've been working on for a few days. Britain's classrooms are being filled with unqualified teaching assistants, including out-of-work actors and shop workers, as desperate schools look to fill gaps with cheap labour. Schools are becoming so so stretched that head teachers are taking in anyone who passes a criminal records check, even if they've never set foot in a classroom before, because there is no current legal requirement for teaching assistants to have any experience or qualifications to start helping children read and write. Again, another idea that was started up a long time ago, which was quite a good idea, which was, I know a lot of parents took part in it, go in and sit in a nursery class, sit in a reception class, help your kids learn to read and all of that. Very nice too. But imagine if teachers start adhering to this, this workers' rights bill and say, well, I was upset by something one of these school kids said, so now the kid has to be expelled because I'm not having them in the classroom.
Yeah, but
that could happen.
Yeah, we've seen kids being kicked out of school, expelled for
things that they've said.
For things that they've said. They actually probably have no idea what they've said. They've just said it because they've heard it on TV or whatever, or they've heard somebody say it in the street. So yeah, absolutely, it's a really slippery slope. And the broader point I think you make is that this is the sort of legislation that's probably going to hold this country back. Yeah. And at a time where we really need to be unleashing businesses and giving them every opportunity.
Well, these are the same government that keeps talking about growth in the economy, which doesn't exist, basically.
But it comes down to brass tacks, Mike. It comes down to, when people, and the problem I think this government has got is it doesn't necessarily have that experience, certainly in small business. But, when people are making those decisions, your listeners are making those decisions about whether to take on that extra person, they're employing 5 people, should I employ 6 people? Yeah. Or I've got this great idea for a van, to do something that, I could earn a few quid doing it. Are they going to be incentivised to do it? Are they going to want to do it? That's what the government needs to be supporting. And if people feel that at every turn their path is going to be blocked, or it's just going to become that much riskier, they're not going to bother doing it, are they?
No, exactly right. And, I mean, you made me think there, just talking about people driving around, and delivery drivers and bus drivers. I mean, what about, bus drivers? What if they take exception to something they hear you saying as you're getting on the bus? Then they ban you from getting on the bus because they don't like what you said.
It's just not going to work.
No, it's going to be insane. And just one final one on the teaching front. Mail page 24. Britain's largest union is to send as National Education Union, formerly known as what was it? It was known as NUT, wasn't it? The National Union of Teachers, which they changed, obviously, because presumably that was offensive. But they're going to send in material on Palestine to schools, basically saying that they're going to be talking about anti-Semitism and ethnic cleansing in Gaza, which is also going to cause all manner of problems.
Yeah, and actually it's one of their own members who is saying they're trying to filter out, this is Peter Block, he's a Jewish member of the NEU, saying they're trying to filter into the curriculum this one-sided view. It's anti-Israel. I worry that these materials will be one-sided and they'll fuel anti-Semitism in schools. And quite right, Peter Block. I mean, that's,
but guess what happened to him after he said that at the conference, which is currently going on? He got kicked out of the conference hall. Because he started shouting at them and saying, what about the other side? How about if you hear from the other side? Oh, no, we don't want that. So he was ejected from the conference hall. No, that's free speech for you in teaching unions.
But there's, you're just... These teaching packs, then you filter it down to kids, and then and then they'll bully other children. Yeah. They'll bully Jewish children in the classroom. Yeah. And we've already had Jewish schools, attacked in this country, and you'll end up, just fertile ground for anti-Semitism in this country. And of course, for the NEU, they'd say, well, that is not. They'd either claim, I guess, it's probably not anti-Semitism, which is absolutely rubbish, or they'd claim that somehow it's justified because I think the NEU and other trade unions probably just concentrate on doing the job at hand. So teachers get taught.
Concentrate on the falling abilities of the children who are leaving your school, and the fact that we appear to be going reverse when it comes to an awful lot of educational subjects like history, like maths, like English. The results are getting worse, not better. So maybe concentrate on that. That might be helpful. 6:47 coming up. Oh, we got a voice note from Steve on the Blue Origin spaceflight.
Hey Mike, Steve from Yorkshire. Just to say, those women who's gone into space, well, women, I don't know what the definition is today, but I'm saying women, they've caused me loads of trouble. I got 5 daughters and now they're talking about, Daddy, Dad, can we put my pocket money towards going to space? Oh God, Dad, everything's space, space, space. Oh dear. Cheers Mike, great show.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. Just buy them a Katy Perry album, and then they can just listen to that for a while and see how it goes. 6:48.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex now.
Flynn has said, Samara, I agree with you all the time, but you're just boring.
Hi! I refuse to work for ITV ever again. Oh! What Just Happened? Fridays at 9 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:50. We're going to talk about the Easter getaway in a minute, because it turns out there's 1,100 miles of cones which the Highways Agency is going to lift up and move out of the way. So there's no roadworks on motorways and A roads. But I mean, if there's 1,100 cones going around just on motorways and A roads, what are they all doing there? And if they can lift them up, then why? We'll be talking to Mr. Pothole later on the show. Theo Usherwood's here with us. Let me just play a little clip from last night. Kevin O'Sullivan last night, Theo, got on the as far as I know, for the first time speaking, the husband of Lucy Connolly, famously locked up for 31 months for a Twitter post. Raymond Connolly is her husband. Here's what he had to say to Kevin last night.
So it's just to preparing. I was trying to prepare a proper defence for her to see what our best options were, but I couldn't get her home. They wouldn't let her on bail. I wanted her to come home and have a chat with people who would be able to tell her the best routes, but she didn't have that option because she couldn't get out of the she couldn't get out of prison. She couldn't, so she had to just go with the advice. She knew I didn't want her to plead guilty. She knew I wanted her to go trial, but she felt it was her best option to get home and see her daughter at the quickest possible. Lucy is very, it's almost like when she speaks to probation at the prison, their words are, look, Lucy, in normal circumstances, this is a done deal. You're low risk and easy manageable, but you are Lucy Connolly. So the home detention curfew was pretty much.
Yeah, that's basically Raymond Connolly talking there about when she was found, when she was arrested, basically. She was basically put in custody, and she's never been out of custody ever since. She was never allowed home. She was never allowed to see her husband outside of the custody suite, if you like. And he said there he didn't want her to plead guilty, but she was advised to plead guilty by her lawyer, who was appointed by the court, because she would get a more lenient sentence. And of course, that's exactly what didn't happen. And instead, she got 31 months, and she's still not being let out, even for sort of, family visits, which normally prisoners would be.
And of course, if it had gone to trial, Mike, and it would have all come out, and there'd been a good chance she'd have been acquitted. Yeah. Because the courts would have looked at it, or jury would have looked at it and said, you need a majority verdict. Yeah, right. And usually 10 to 2. Yeah. They don't really accept 9 to 3. So you only need three members of that jury to say, hang on a moment, okay, it's offensive, but it's not a criminal. We're not going to. Clearly, there's no intent to cause incite serious harm. Right. And would have let her off. Yeah. And that would have been incredibly damaging to the government.
And it's still damaging to the government now, because she's done 8 months of a 31-month sentence. Yeah. Look, the point's been made, and many people are now saying, all right, enough is enough already. She's had her punishment. She's a mother of young children. Her husband's not particularly well. His health is in question. Just let her out. And put her on license. Put her give her a sort of, you can put her under house arrest even if you want. But, for her to have to spend another 23 months, another 2 years practically in jail is ridiculous.
But I heard it right there. He was saying that the probation service were looking at sending her home, normal circumstances allowing her to go home, and now they're saying, oh, well, you're Lucy Connolly, so you can't.
No, there's no question that she's being treated differently and more harshly than any other prisoner has ever been treated.
And the kids, you know, their kids are no part of this, right?
No.
And they deserve,
and the kids are suffering.
Yeah,
you know, he speaks as well in the interview, because it was a great interview, and it was a great interview to get for Kevin. Speaks about he speaks about how the kids are, you know, unruly. That, you know, they're confused. They don't know why their mother's locked up. They just, you know, they're little kids.
Yeah, they need their mum back, and it is just. Yeah, as you say, Mike, enough's enough.
Enough is enough. You made your point. You know, but this is Keir Starmer's problem. Once again, he is a vindictive, a twisted, bizarre individual who doesn't seem to understand empathy, doesn't seem to understand British mindset, and all he knows is rules and regulations and cracking down hard on all the wrong people. Why doesn't he crack down hard on some of the bleeding illegal migrants that are coming here? You know, by the way, 700 of them came yesterday, and there was only a new record broken at the weekend, last weekend, on Friday, 656. Yesterday, 700. And it was a pretty horrible day weather-wise.
Yeah, and this is a problem that's going to get worse over the course of the summer. And we're spending, what, £8 million a day now on hotels up and down the country.
I know, absolutely shocking. Let's talk about the Easter break coming up, because another criticism of Starmer, which I mentioned in my Telegraph piece as well, is that he hasn't actually mentioned Lent or Easter at any point at all so far, despite all the other various religious holidays that he points to from all sorts of other religions, which would not be generally considered to be perhaps British. But 1,100 miles of cones are going to be lifted for the Easter getaway, it's according to a piece in the Mail on page 9. I mean, I don't know what 1,100 cones looks like. 1,100 miles of cones. Sorry, I'm wrong. It's not 1,100 cones. 1,100 miles of cones. So it's probably millions of cones, I suppose.
I don't know.
I don't know how many cones per mile.
They feel like they're doing a good. I can imagine the press officers there tapping away. We're doing a good thing for motorists here. But you know, most of the motorists would be like, hang on a moment, why, if you're taking them away, why did you need them in the first place?
Exactly. And why are there 1,100 miles of them?
During the Easter holidays.
Yeah.
And it's like you're doing us a favour. Well, thanks, but what if you're taking them away now, what is it? Just some sort of punishment?
Well, most motorists know that if you drive on A roads or motorways, you see the cones, but there's nobody actually doing anything.
No.
You know, there's whole areas coned off which you can't drive on, but there's nobody actually there.
No,
it's bizarre.
You're looking. You look out your window and there's nobody turns up. And when I actually do see people doing road work, it's late at night.
Yeah.
And that's when they seem to, you actually see some sort of action.
I mean, around London at the moment, the only thing you ever see is temporary traffic lights, and there's always a Thames Water van somewhere not far away, because it's Thames Water desperately trying to do something. Because we had a story yesterday. There was 3 billion litres of water actually somehow leaking into the ground every single day. In this world in which we live. It's incredible. Also, rain warnings coming. We had some heavy rain yesterday. This is another one. Up to 3 inches of rain is forecast, with the Met Office warning of power cuts and disruption on roads and railways. I mean, strangely enough, the Mail have got these 2 stories written in 2 completely separate pages, but they seem to me to be the same story.
Yeah.
You know, so you're going to lift all the cones up, but the roads are going to be flooded anyway. So it won't make any difference.
Typical bank holiday.
Typical bank holiday. So I suppose the biggest day not to be travelling will be Thursday, right? Because that'll be the busiest one. Rather than Friday, which is when I'm travelling.
Were you driving?
Yeah, I'll be driving on Friday, Good Friday, after working, of course, because we don't take days off in bank holidays here at Talk. One final story, very weird. I don't really understand it. It's a $1 million event that will draw thousands of spectators and plenty of betting slips, according to the Mail on page 3. But it's not heavyweight boxers. It's not expensive racehorses. It's a sperm race.
Yes, so the sperm measure just 0.05 millimetres, and they're going to fight it out around a 20-centimetre circuit, which mimics the human reproductive system, and then you're going to be able to bet. They're going to use high-resolution cameras, so you can watch the race, which is taking place at the Hollywood Palladium in Los Angeles, not this weekend, the weekend after. And yes, you can bet on it, but apparently there's a serious point, and that is that we're seeing a crisis in male fertility, and that's why they're trying to raise its brainchild of sperm.
So they're
racing.
basically trying to track them to see how quickly they're moving,
and then you can bet on them.
Right.
So instead of a snail race or a horse race or a racing the dogs or whatever, you can bet on them.
But there's only 2, presumably, isn't there? Or is there more than 2?
No, I think you can put as many as you like.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I mean, it's not one. I mean,
it's a bit of an odd story, isn't it?
Wherever tickles your pickle. That's
indeed, absolutely right. Well, listen, Theo, thank you very much indeed. Theo Rushwood there with a roundup of all the stories in the papers. We've got loads more to do, of course. Ryan Sabey from The Sun coming up in the next hour. We'll ask him about what on earth Keir Starmer is up to, trying to drag us back into the European Union. Also, still away on holiday, but not leaving Angela Rayner in charge of anything at all. The bins still need emptying in Birmingham. That's still not going on. And we'll find out what's going on with British Steel. Loads more to come right here on Morning Glory. Do not go anywhere. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. The best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. It's the one place to be to keep yourself abreast of all of the things that are going on. We've got a bit of breaking news this morning. The annual rate of inflation has just been published. It came in at 2.6% in the last month. The Office for National Statistics have said. Economists said that they were expecting a rate of 2.7%. I mean, so it's not an awful lot different from that, really, is it? 0.1% doesn't really make you richer, doesn't really make you poorer, but certainly it says that inflation at 2.6% is relatively, I suppose, steady as you go. Liam Halligan will join us very shortly. He's from The Telegraph, of course. He'll talk about the state of the economy and exactly what the inflation figures actually mean for you. It was 2.8% back in February. This is a figure for March, so it's come down slightly. No doubt this will be Keir Starmer's message to say, we are getting a grip of the economy. We are seeing inflation fall. The trouble is, all of the figures that they have, whether it's for growth or non-growth, or it's for inflation, or whether it's for price rises or unemployment, the number changes are so small. All it really guarantees you is that the entire economy is flatlining. There is nothing really going on. There's not much investment being made. We've got a story today saying that Clinton Cards, you know, the card shop in the high street, are losing another few hundred jobs. They're losing another load of stores. They're going to be shutting down more stores in the high street because there simply isn't the footfall, there simply isn't the business, and there simply isn't the money being spent by people because they simply don't have it, and they don't really want to. I mean, we've got a story today of Southern Water putting prices up by 47%. Unbelievable. How can you raise prices for water by almost 50%? It makes absolutely no sense. We're going to talk to Ryan Sobey from The Sun coming up in this hour as well. The big stories this morning, a summer of discontent is looming because an awful lot of trade unions are beginning to flex their muscles. They've worked out basically this Labour government will give them pretty much anything they ask for. The bin strike in Birmingham continues, and that's just one signal of what could be happening. We could see NHS strikes, we could see teachers going on strike, we could see civil servants going on strike, and all manner of public sector workers, probably the train drivers as well. It's all happening, and it's all going to come clattering down upon the head of Keir Starmer, who's only 2 weeks away from what looks like a terrible, terrible defeat in the local elections on May the 1st. 0344 499 1000 is the number. By the way, just in case you were wondering, and you might be one of them, there's an extra 11 million people being dragged into income tax as well, by the way. So even if you don't have a summer of discontent, you'll be pretty discontented already. And it's only 7:05 on a Wednesday. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. I've got this from Mike in Erith. Morning, Mike. He says, with regards to the roadworks, the length of the coned-off area needs to be greatly reduced. Normal speeds should be restored if they are not working. It's frustrating to drive at 30 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour area and see nobody there. Well, this is the thing. It's this obsession with health and safety, isn't it? For the same reason that if they're cutting down hedges in a road, they completely cone off one side of the road and put a temporary traffic light up instead of actually asking people to be sensible. Morning, Mike. In relation to the sperm race, says Christine, how are they going to tell them apart? Have they knitted them little coloured jerseys? Thank you for a great show, as ever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they do that at all. And Brian from Spain says, I didn't realise that the NUT had changed their name to NEU. I'm sorry, they'll always be nuts to me. Keep going, Mike. Common sense is less common than we thought. Yes, indeed. Absolutely right. Let's talk to Ryan Sobey, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Ryan, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. A summer of discontent, we're told, on the front page of the Telegraph. Connected in a bit, I suppose, to that terrible situation up in Birmingham, where the rats are running wild, where the foxes are feasting every single day and every single night on 21 or 22,000 tonnes of trash sitting there and have been sitting there for months on end. I mean, it's a terrible state of affairs. The unions are starting to flex their muscles, though, which is what we kind of predicted, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's right. And we've seen that the union bosses will hold talks today with Birmingham City Council to try and resolve or try and move a step closer to resolving this rubbish crisis up in Birmingham. But over the last couple of days, we've seen other sectors, other workers in the public sector thinking about going on strike later in the year. We had the National Education Union. They held what is known as an indicative vote. Now, that was nothing legally binding or anything like that, but just a signal of intent that they are prepared to go on strike, possibly come the autumn. There could be a series of votes over the summer, so classrooms could be at risk when the kids go back to school in September. But also the nurses, again, another vote, them flexing their muscles, saying that they could actually walk out as well. With the teachers, they're not very happy with this the government recommended pay rise of 2.8%. They are prepared to down tools if necessary to get a bigger pay rise. They say that pay deal is totally inadequate and they are prepared to walk out.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose we could have seen this coming. We saw it as soon as Labour got in last year. The one thing that they did was to keep their promise. It was one of the few promises they did keep, which was to pay the NHS workers loads more money. I think it was 22 billion they gave to the junior doctors. All of that was swallowed up, this NHS sort of feeder money, if you like, swallowed up in a pay rise. And then we saw the train drivers getting what they wanted from ASLEF, about 15% there. The RMT came back for more. It's going to be a sort of merry-go-round, isn't it, of unions. And with Unite, it's even more interesting because, of course, Unite have given millions and millions of pounds to Labour since Keir Starmer became the leader. They're also involved in the Birmingham pay dispute because some of the Birmingham councillors who are fighting Unite the union are actually in the Unite union.
Yeah, this is the big problem. There's also always such close links between the unions and Labour. And Unite, interestingly, have not per se given so much to the Labour Party, the big umbrella organisation in recent years. What they have been doing, they have been funding individual candidates up and down the country. So obviously there are very, very close ties there. So we'll just have to see how quickly or how this deal can be struck between Birmingham City Council and the unions when they get their heads together today. But I see that there's a rally today. There's more protest over these paying conditions. There's 40 odd of these bin collectors who are holding out. 130 of them have actually said we're going to take what's on offer from the council, whether that involves retraining or moving to another job within the sector and within the bin collection setup there. But 40 of these are holding out. And as I was speaking to senior Conservatives yesterday, they are saying effectively these 40 are holding the city to ransom.
Right. And are those other 130-odd people, are they also members of Unite, or are they not in the union?
I get the impression they are. I have to check on every single one of them, but I think they are part of the setup, and they've actually accepted the terms on offer. So if that 130 can accept it, what about this final 40? And we're entering the 6th week of this dispute, and the people of Birmingham are literally pulling their hair out. And yesterday there was residents there saying they're seeing rodents, cat-sized rodents running up and down the street. So it's a really, really serious situation. Now, I also get the impression that some of the areas in the suburbs are actually quite clean, and their bins are being taken away. But a lot of areas elsewhere, there are major problems, and the number of bin lorries that are actually leaving the depots every morning is not as much as what they should be.
No, it's a dreadful state of affairs. I've got this message from Sean in Bridlington. He says, could Birmingham residents who get ill as a result of all the rubbish on the streets sue the Unite Union? Just a thought. Well, I mean, you do wonder, because it is a massive health hazard, and Angela Rayner, I think, has been a little bit kind of, I would say, standoffish, more so than she should be, because apart from the fact that she's quite close to Unite, I think she's taken Unite donations in the past, she should be surely making them do a deal, as opposed to just suggesting that they do one.
Yeah, I think one of the things, this is becoming obviously a big political problem. There is local elections on the horizon. You would have thought, perhaps people at the top end of government would have sent Angela Rayner there, would have sent the other junior minister, Jim McMahon, there, just to bang some heads together, get everyone around the table and actually just sort this out this week. This can't, this really can't go on for the sake of the people in Birmingham. And as you say, it's an emergency health hazard. Bins all over the place, rodents. It's just not particularly healthy for anyone with anyone who's got health concerns. It's not particularly good for children. Can they go out and play in the streets in Birmingham, in certain areas? It looks like not at the moment.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't let my kids play out in the street that was full of rubbish and rats, would you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting, and horrendous situation for families just trying to go about their daily business. So I think, with those local elections on the horizon, and also the threat, as Sharon Graham, the boss of Unite, said yesterday, that these strikes and this industrial action could actually spread to other parts of the country, like Yorkshire, into Cambridgeshire. Actually, it's time to just nip this in the bud and actually make sure this dispute ends as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It might be a bit late for nipping in the bud. I think the bud has well and truly flowered into something rather poisonous and ghastly. Let's talk about the Telegraph story as well. Keir Starmer closing in on a new partnership with the European Union that could put a trade deal with the White House at risk. Now, this is from the man who wanted a second referendum, who told us he wasn't going to be anywhere near rejoining the European Union, but he does want, obviously, some kind of closer relationship with the EU. This is not going to make people who voted for Brexit very happy, is it?
No, exactly. You're going to get big cries of a Brexit betrayal from Sir Keir Starmer, and it's an opportunity for his critics to bring up the fact that he campaigned for a second referendum in the aftermath of that Brexit vote. But I think it just shows the tightrope that Sir Keir has to walk between the European Union on one hand and the United States on the other. It's very difficult
it's just to prepare,
for him, because
I was trying to.
He's got to make a choice. Does he want closer alignment, that dynamic alignment with the European Union? But will that, on the other hand, actually make a deal with the United States, this big trade deal, actually make it almost sort of non-existent and inconsequential? Because some of the things we'll be signing up to, all the, you know, the best the agriculture, which the United States want to get involved in, all of that will be signed away to the European Union. So that is why it's really, really difficult that on the one hand, he can't give everything to the European Union on the checks and signing up to their rules and regulations if it means that US deal is at risk.
Yeah, I mean, that is the real problem, isn't it? And I guess, as I said earlier to Theo Usherwood when he was here, you know, depending on what these rules are they've signed up to, those rules could also change. And if there was somehow a tariff war that started, I'm not saying there would be one, between the EU and the United States of America, we'd be sucked into it.
Exactly. And I think because we're effectively become part of that, I wouldn't say we're signing up to their customs union, because we're certainly not doing that. But once you start signing up to their rules and regulations, you become very much tied to that mast. But I think one thing that Sir Keir Starmer also has to be aware of, it's not only deals with the European Union that we want to get, it's all those around the world. So it almost handcuffs him slightly if we want to be signing trade deals with the rest of the world to boost economic growth. And if we are so closely linked to the European Union on those key subjects, does it hinder him? And I think that's the question he's got to answer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we understand that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is on holiday this week. Any ideas where he is or when he's going to come back?
There weren't many clues earlier in the week. I think it's somewhere hot. Now, we tried to get out of Downing Street, whether it was skiing or whether it was you know, some sunnier climes, but I think I don't know. We don't know where he is, but I imagine he's taking a few days off before he comes back after Easter.
Yeah, well, he certainly hasn't got much to celebrate, has he? Because we've also got the big story coming up later on this month. There's a parliamentary hearing on the banter ban bill, as it's being known. Toby Young, Lord Young, is going to be calling for a sweeping overhaul of some of the workers' rights bills, including this ridiculous notion that people in pubs could actually be told that they can't talk about certain things because they've upset the staff and the staff have complained about it.
Yeah, it's not as if people in pubs and the hospitality industry haven't got enough to worry about over the last few weeks. They've had to contend with things like rises to the national minimum wage. They've had increases, obviously, to their national insurance contributions, and now to some of their staff or do the bosses have to actually monitor what people say in pubs. And also Lord Young bringing up the issue whether people who running football stadiums, football bosses and chairmen have to actually watch what the fans say, because you can have referees running up and down the pitch, and are they going to be offended by football fans saying, "Are you blind, ref?" So yeah. That's one other thing that...
well, I mean, you might get Phil Foden complaining about some of the chants that were being made about his mother the other day.
Well, exactly. And I think this is one of the reasons, and I think particularly when it comes to the pubs and workplaces, that people are so frustrated by this piece of legislation that's going through Parliament that it's just going to strangle businesses in red tape. And I think that's one of the reasons why they want the business voice to just be a little bit louder in this debate, because at the moment, as you know, it just seems that they're just being strangled, and I think that business voice and they want more soundings from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, maybe and Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, to actually say to Angela Rayner, this has gone too far.
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen a statement from Rachel Reeves on the inflation figures. They're basically saying that inflation falling for 2 months in a row, wages growing faster than prices, and positive growth figures. Well, there aren't any positive growth figures, and wages are not any longer growing faster than prices. That's completely wrong. It's another outright barefaced lie, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think on one thing, I think on the face of it, this drop in inflation today is minimal. It's welcome news. However, this does seem like it's the calm before the storm, because it does seem that the forecast for inflation could go up to 3.6 or 3.7% in the coming months, and that's due to inflation in household bills, energy bills. Wage growth is still very, very strong. So this is something that is going to weigh into the mind of Rachel Reeves. So as much as she'll welcome the news today, it does seem there's a there is sort of a bit more nasty news on the horizon.
Yeah.
So,
but they can't just keep saying things are great or positive without anybody thinking that they're talking absolute and utter nonsense. You know, you can't just keep telling people that we're putting more money back into your pocket, because inflation being at 2.6% doesn't stop prices going up. She doesn't seem to understand that, Ms. Economist, does she?
Yeah, no, I think this is one of the big issues for the government, and also when it comes to actually raising living standards, it's going to be extremely tough, because one of their big things is, do people feel actually better off in their pockets? And I think that's going to be one of the big questions, and how people are actually going to judge this government. So as much as they'll welcome this reduction today, it could get a lot tougher. And we just look at the increases for business on the national insurance rate.
Yeah.
All these things are just going to push up inflation and that wage growth as well. And it makes a big question for the Bank of England. Do they cut interest rates as much as 3 times now, in light of the information today, and also the prospect of inflation actually going up? All these things are going to be weighing in their minds. Do they actually cut it to give people a bit more money in their pockets and get the economy going? This is the big dilemma for them.
Well, this is the problem. I don't think they can help it. Very good to talk to you, though. Ryan Sabey, thank you very much indeed. Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Coming up, we're going to speak to Liam Halligan, Telegraph columnist, expert on the economy. He'll give us the lowdown on what these inflation figures mean. Good morning, Mike, says Sharon. It's always a pleasure to wake up and see Theo Usherwood on your programme. Everyone needs to strike now. Look at the state of our country, yet Starmer and Lammy just keep dishing out our hard-earned taxpayer money to other countries like Sudan. Sharon from Staffordshire. And Jane says, why are we bothering with the EU? We've left, supposedly. I would rather trust Trump with all his faults, says Jane. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Hi, morning, Mike. Andy in Southsea. I just want to put my 2 pence in about that poor incarcerated woman who's been in prison for 8 months. She shouldn't have been in prison at all, in my view. I mean, all right, she might have said something which was, out of order, but she soon retracted it and took it away, or took it down, whatever. And she's still in prison now, and she's got children and an husband who's sick. And you've got all these other criminals running around, getting away with things. Even convicts in prison being able to work in kitchens and fashion shanks and stuff to cause prison officers harm and stuff. I mean, everything's just so wrong.
Absolutely right, Andy. You're quite right. You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. People are so fed up now with what is going on in this country, because everything seems to be topsy-turvy, upside down and wrong. Liam Halligan's coming next.
when atrocities of this scale, I mean, imagine like the appalling Manchester Arena attack times hundreds, that when that happens, so many people in our society are not on the side of the victims, but are on the side of the death cult, are chanting support for Hamas and Hezbollah on Britain's streets. Why within days were hundreds of thousands of our fellow Brits supporting the people who were the rapists, the jihadists, the beheaders?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 7:25. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course, when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. The annual rate of inflation has come in for the month of March at 2.6%, according to the Office for National Statistics. Economists said that they were expecting 2.7%. Rachel Reeves, of course, is saying that it means that their plan for change is working. I'm not sure that everyone would agree with that. Let's see what Liam Halligan has to say about it, Telegraph columnist and expert on, of course, the economy that we are currently in. Liam, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm not sure that Rachel Reeves' statement, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it in full, is entirely genuine. She says, inflation falling for 2 months in a row, wages growing faster than prices, and positive growth figures are encouraging signs that our plan for change is working. But there is more to be done. I mean, you can say that again, couldn't you?
You can indeed. Look, this is a temporary reprieve in inflation. We're still well above the 2% Bank of England target. Of course, as every talk radio listener and viewer knows, prices aren't coming down. They're just going up less quickly. Yeah. The Bank of England has a 2% target. We're at 2.6. The Bank of England itself, whatever the Chancellor says, acknowledges that by the end of this year, inflation is going to be 3.7%, so almost double the 2% target, the cost of living crisis increasing, and it will remain above 2% for all of next year too. Now, why is this happening, Mike? Why is this March figure down and why is it going to go up again? Well, this is a figure for March. We all know that in April, the energy price cap went up by 9% compared to last year. We know that in April, the minimum wage increase came in, which is going to massively increase firms' costs, as well as the increase in national insurance contributions. All those price pressures are going to feed through. So look, it's good news that inflation is down for now, but prices are still going up, as everyone knows, and there's a lot more inflation to come. That's the bottom line.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, also council tax went up in April as well, which is going to affect an awful lot of people and what they're paying. And Frankie has sent me a tweet to say, 2.6%, my ass, he actually says, I'm going to say it. He says, my shopping was 20% more last week than it was at Christmas. And we've also seen a story this morning, people complaining about Southern Water, which is one of the many water companies who are putting their prices up. In some cases, 47% a rise in the water rates. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, that surely must have a knock-on effect at some point.
I think Frankie speaks for a lot of people. Look, I do think the Office for National Statistics has got a problem in the sense that increasingly the public don't believe the inflation figures. They don't believe that this headline index, which is called the Consumer Price Index, as you know, Mike, it's the index that the Bank of England targets. It includes a basket of goods and services that we all buy. Yeah. I don't think it nearly weighs heavily enough when it comes to utility bills, when it comes to energy prices, which have gone up hugely. Look, energy prices are like 40 or 50% higher than they were before lockdown. Everyone knows that. Food prices are 30% higher than they were before lockdown. And there seems to be no end in sight to these price rises. And when you have a situation where also you have things happening like shrinkflation, so, you know, we all know that certain chocolate bars are a lot smaller than they used to be, even though the price has gone up, well, you're getting a lot less for your money. That's
Packets of crisps as well.
People are talking in pubs about this stuff all the time. They come up to me and talk about it.
Well, that's
the fact that inflation measure isn't really capturing what's really happening. And once you get that happening, Mike, you get an increase in what we call inflation expectations. People start pushing for much, much higher wage rises. Trade unions get a lot bolshier. Firms start building into their cost structures and their pricing going forward bigger price rises, because no one believes the inflation index. I think Frankie's right. I think this is a big problem.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I opened a packet of crisps the other day. There was only about 10
Not like
crisps.
you, Mike. Looking so svelte.
I know. There was only about 10 crisps in it. I was going, what's going on? But I mean...
You'd have to have 4 rather than your normal 3 packets.
Exactly. You really do. You have to buy the multi-pack now. But, you know, the thing is that that people are also... they're cleverer than the government gives them credit for. You know, they can see that everything costs more, you know, and you don't get as much for your money. And we know, for example, that UK average regular earnings growth decreased to 5.6% in the 3 months to February. So how the Chancellor can get away with saying wages are growing faster than prices, which is, I mean, I'm going to call it out. It's not true. It's a falsification. It's a distortion of the truth, or in other words, it's a lie.
Well, look, you've got headline wage figures. These are average, and you know, statistically at least, headline wages are going up faster than prices for now, even though for many, many years headline wage increases have lagged increases in the cost of living, not least increases in the price of housing, whether you're renting or trying to buy a house. And you know, your audience will be nodding from the waist at this point. We all know how expensive housing has got across all parts of the country. It's not just a southeast thing. And I do think there's a sense where, you know, our living standards are just falling away.
Yeah.
And also another statistical issue that we have, God, you and me talking about statistics early on a Wednesday morning, who'd have thunk it? But another issue is this thing, you know, GDP, gross domestic product, the size of the economy. We all know that even though we have seen a bit of GDP growth in this country, that actually GDP per head, GDP per capita, as statisticians say, if I can keep my dentures in, has been falling. We've been in a GDP per head recession the last year and a half, Mike, with income per head, national wealth per head falling, because even though the economy's been growing a bit, the population, as we all know, has been growing much, much faster. So when the national statistics that we all rely on, and I think the public take a good deal of, you know, they follow them closely, a lot closer than a lot of the media gives them credit for, with respect. When the national statistics aren't reflecting people's own thoughts and feelings and experiences, the public loses faith in the national statistics, policy making goes awry, and you get completely lost. I do think there's a danger of that.
And what happens if inflation does start to rise and the Bank of England starts to get a bit jittery and they then start putting interest rates up? Because while that might be good for savers, if anybody's got any money worth saving, it's not going to be good news for homeowners. The mortgages go up. You know, they have even less money to spend on everyday sort of, you know, goods.
Exactly right. Of course, in general, when inflation's coming down, when it's below target or near the target, the Bank of England may feel that you can lower interest rates in order to you know, speed the economy up, make it easier to borrow, easier to invest money, maybe give mortgage holders a break if they're on variable rate interests deals. And when inflation's high and above target and rising, then the Bank of England may feel it has to raise rates to slow the economy down so we don't get more inflation. Look, we've seen 3 interest rate cuts from the Bank of England, right, since last summer, from 5.25 quarter point cuts all the way down to 4.5, where we currently are. I don't think there's going to be another interest rate cut. I've said that for a long time. Why? Because the Bank of England's own forecasts suggest that inflation is going up a lot over the coming months, starting next month in April, when those tax rises come in, when those energy price hikes for firms and households come in, as we were discussing earlier. They're saying it's going to go all the way up to 3.7%. And guess what? The Bank of England systematically underestimates future inflation. That's what we've seen for many, many years. Remember during lockdown, as we were coming out of lockdown, and Andrew Bailey kept saying, "Oh, don't worry, this high inflation, it's transitory, old boy." No, it wasn't transitory. It went on and on and on. It went all up to 11%, of course, and then we have multiple interest rate cuts, as some of us warned would happen. So I don't actually see another interest rate cut coming, and that will, of course, deter consumers, deter investors from trying to get our economy out the kind of stagnation pit, near recession, that it currently is in. This is what happens when you award, massive increases in the minimum wage. Yeah. For 18 to 20-year-olds, the increase in the minimum wage was 17%, Mike. Now, I don't begrudge people a decent wage, but we're absolutely hammering businesses with taxes and mandatory wage rises at a time when businesses are still trying to recover from the madness of lockdown. Yeah. That's what's going on. Look at business sentiment. And of course, the economy isn't just about businesses and what businesses want. But unless businesses are thriving, none of the rest of us can thrive. Every single bit of money we have, every single bit of money the government takes off us and then spends, exists because a business created it and paid workers wages. And I think we are hammering businesses in this country, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises. And the more stagnation you get in business, the worse inflation gets, because firms have to put up their costs in order to survive. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely right. Great to talk to you, Liam. Thanks very much indeed. Liam Halligan there, Telegraph columnist, a man who knows a thing or two about inflation and what's going on in our economy. And you know a thing or two as well. Lynn from Yorkshire says, I don't know where they're getting the inflation figures from, but I think they might be massaging them a bit. I bought a box of beers last week for £10. I bought the same box yesterday from the same shop, and it was £11.25. And that's just a small little soupçon of a look into what is going on. We've got lots of that. I'll take some more of your information on anything like that. Anything you've been buying that's gone up in price, I'd love to hear it, because I think the inflation prices are way off. Let's get a voice note from Ash.
Hi Mike, Ash from Preston. Wages are not growing faster than prices. The only reason Labour can say there's any growth in wages at all is because they pumped billions upon billions into public sector pay rises. The private sector wages aren't rising at all because Labour have destroyed the sector by increasing national insurance contributions, etc. Complete bunch of charlatans. Cheers.
Now, I thought you were going to say something else there, Ash, for a minute, but you're quite right. Complete bunch of charlatans, as James Well would say. One from Ray in Huntingdon. It's true I'm getting more money in my pocket, 1.7% forces pay rise. But what they don't mention, that it's all and more going out the other pocket on all of my bills that have gone up more than 1.7%. Well, of course they have. And that is exactly the point. And they're not measuring apples with apples, it seems to me. For Rachel Reeves to come out and say this is proof that the plan for change is working is complete and utter nonsense. She also says, I know many families are still struggling with the cost of living, and this is an anxious time because of a changing world. Well, a changing world's got nothing to do with inflation. A changing world's got nothing to do with the bins not being emptied and a bin strike going on in Birmingham. A changing world's got nothing to do with the national insurance price rise for every single business in this country. And a changing world's got absolutely nothing to do with a rise in the minimum wage, which is costing companies more and more money. So I'm afraid the changing world is not anything to do with Labour. And it's nothing to do with the way they've stewarded this economy into the gutter, quite frankly. It's 7:37.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:39. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. It is the world headquarters of it, no less. And you're with Talk. You can listen on DAB, you can listen on the radio, or, of course, on your smart speaker. We're on YouTube. We're on your connected device as well. You can tweet us at TalkTV, and you can send us a voice note to 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Charles Feldman now, US political analyst, about what's going on over in his part of the world. The FTSE surged yesterday. In fact, I was reading a piece on the front page of the Financial Times this morning that Wall Street banks have reaped $37 billion after traders cash in on the Trump volatility. It's what I always say, whether the markets are going up or down, there's always a trader somewhere buying a new Lamborghini. Charles, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Plenty of Lamborghinis here in Los Angeles, I can tell you that.
I'm sure, because this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, they don't make money when nothing happens. They make money when it goes up. They make money when it goes down. They buy it up. They buy it on the way down. It's always quite an extraordinary state of affairs. What's going on in America this week?
Well, a lot, and a lot of it has to do with the markets. I mean, there's still this enormous uncertainty about what the White House, what Trump is going to do when it comes to tariffs. You know, one day there are tariffs, the next day there aren't. Then there are deals being cut with different countries. You know, as I'm sure you know, there's great speculation about the U.S. having a special deal with the U.K., although the details of that nobody seems to know yet. So, you know, investors, as you know, they don't like uncertainty. Nobody does, but investors in particular don't. And so what happens when the markets open in the States tomorrow morning? Your guess is as good as mine. My best guess, Mike, is we're going to have another week of volatility. Right. We're going to have, you know, ups and downs and sideways and every way you can go. I don't think we're going to see a steady decline or a steady increase, for that matter, in the markets. I think it's all going to depend on the day-to-day announcements from President Trump about what he intends to do.
And that does tend to change, doesn't it? I mean, even just from the British perspective, there's talk of the tariff on cars of 25% being removed. There's talk of a deal being done very soon to remove the other 10% on some of the other stuff. You know, an awful lot of the tariffs that he has been putting on are very possibly going to be removed. You just don't really know, do you?
No, and you know, an awful lot of economists don't have a general dislike for tariffs. Many do, but some of them don't. What they don't like is what we were just now talking about, the sort of Monday it's one thing, Tuesday it's another, Wednesday it's something else again. You know, other countries have to have confidence in what the United States, which is the world's largest economy, they have to have confidence in what the U.S. is going to do. And you see this lack of confidence now in our bond market, because a lot of countries, last week, China in particular, apparently they were selling U.S. bonds because that indicated a certain lack of confidence, lack of faith in the U.S. economy. And that's something that we have not experienced in this country for at least, you know, half a century, if not more.
No, true. Let's have a quick look at a couple of clips. We've got one here from Trump on self-deportation, which is one of his big bugbears at the moment.
As you probably know, we're doing a self-deportation. And we're going to make it comfortable for people, and we're going to work with those people to come back into our country legally.
¿Está funcionando la autodeportación?
Well, we're starting it. We haven't started it right now. We're getting the murderers out. We have our total aim on the very bad ones, as you can imagine, because you have some great people that came in, but we have some very bad ones. We had 11,088 murderers. Half of them killed more than one person. These are rough, bad people. We want them out. And that's mostly our focus.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is we're going to have a self-deportation program, which we haven't even announced yet. I guess I'm announcing it to you. Why not, Rachel? Here it is. The only thing I haven't determined is what are we going to do? We're going to give them a stipend. We're going to give them some money and a plane ticket. And then we're going to work with them. If they're good, if we want them back in, we're going to work with them to get them back in as quickly as we can.
And that was him talking on a Fox Spanish language network, which explains why the questions were coming in there in Spanish. This is quite an interesting idea, isn't it? He's basically saying that we'll deport you with your assistance and your cooperation. If you do cooperate with us, there's a chance we'll let you come back in legally if you apply through the right channels. But if you don't, and you don't agree to do it this way, then you'll never be able to come back. I mean, it's an interesting manoeuvre. Will it work?
Probably not. And the reason why it won't is because of suspicion that an awful lot of people who are in, frankly, the United States illegally are not going to want to put their names down on, I think there's the idea is that there's going to be an app and they can go on the app and they can sign their names and say, hey, here I am, I'm in Los Angeles or I'm in New York or Chicago or wherever, and then they would be on their way off to wherever they came from with a pathway back, as I think President Trump suggested, back to the U.S. But I think a lot of people who are in the country here illegally are going to be highly suspicious of that. They are going to be fearful that it will be a one-way ticket and that they will be separated perhaps from family members, especially if they've lived and even worked in the U.S. for a good number of years. So I may be wrong on this, but if I had to hazard a guess, I think that the acceptance rate, if you will, of this particular venture is going to be very, very small.
Well, we'll see what happens. Good to talk to you. Charles Feldman, thanks very much indeed. US political analyst there. Interesting one here from Jill in Berkshire says this. Mike, it's very worrying about what's happening in Birmingham with all the rubbish infested by rats. It should be made an emergency due to health hazard, as didn't Gene Hackman's wife die of a disease linked to rodents? I believe it was called hantavirus. I would be so scared if that was my grandchildren having to live with this. It's disgusting. It will only put more pressure on the NHS when people become life-threateningly ill. Love your show. Yeah, Jill, you're absolutely right. I mean, there was a connection to some kind of rat disease that Gene Hackman's wife died from. He died, obviously, I think, of natural causes, but she was infected with some kind of rat disease, which there must be running around and roaming around in Birmingham, you would think. You would think that would make even more of an absolute opportunity for the Birmingham City Council to come to terms, to do a deal with Unite. Many, as we heard, of the bin men have done a deal, 130 of them have, but 40-odd of them have not. We'll be talking to Unite about that coming up a little bit later on. Coming up next, though, Mr. Potholes here. He's going to tell us about why failed promises and things that they said they would do are not being done. Politicians, once again, letting us down.
We had alternatives that we sold in our stores, which we got people onto a healthier choice, which is a smoke-free. But we've had to do that ourselves. There's been no support from the government. Tobacco sales are declining year on year, but we're not tackling the biggest problem in this. This is illicit trade. It's costing the UK a lot of money every year. It's getting into the hands of children, and do they think by putting a generation ban, people will still not get cigarettes or vapes? I disagree.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. It is the home of common sense. Lots of you mentioning prices to me this morning, saying you simply don't believe the inflation figure that came out this morning for March. 2.6% is what it says. Gareth says this, great. Milk from Popular Supermarket about 6 months ago, £1.29 per bottle. A couple of weeks ago, bought it for £1.65. Bought it yesterday, it's £1.95. I simply do not believe the inflation figures. Inflation is down my backside. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Ian.
Good morning, Mike. It's Ian from Nottingham. Hope you're well. Great show as always. Top man. Yeah, inflation. They'd have us believe anything, wouldn't they? Do they genuinely, honestly, think we, and I mean the royal we, as in everybody, is stupid? Because we're not. We walk to the shops. We drive to the shops. Putting petrol in a car that always goes up, never goes down. Unless it's 1p. Everything in the shops is so much more expensive. People see it. Energy prices, you name it, across the board. Hang on a minute, Rachel. Oh, yes, everything's going down. There's a pink pig flying past my window.
You're absolutely right. Nobody's buying this rubbish, right? I don't know who's putting it out. Office for National Statistics, whoever's running it, you need to get a new statistician because you're getting it completely wrong. Mary in Northampton says this, I use a facial scrub, costs £3.50. I went to buy it from the same shop. It's now £5. How about this? Brendan, here in the southwest water area, my water bill has gone from £505 to £789 for the year. This equates to a 56% increase. So how is inflation at 2.6%? Makes no sense at all. Let's talk to Mr. Pothole, because there's something about inflation of potholes that's going on. There's a lot more potholes now per square mile than there's ever been. He's going to give us the rundown on why election promises are not all they seem to be. Mr. Pothole, Mark Morell, very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. We're getting very near a local election, which is when you know the politicians are all going to be out in force talking about fixing potholes, because that's all they want to do. Tell us about what they're saying and what they're actually doing.
Right, well, I tweeted any politician that says they're going to fix pothole Britain is either frankly deluded, ignorant of the size of the problem, or just not telling you the truth. I mean, I think you should call the UK Fantasy Island, because there was a television programme some years ago about it. Exactly about the, they're taking us for mugs, like on the prices and inflation.
Yeah.
Same thing, government are saying they're going to invest £1.6 billion, and they say it's a record amount. Well, in fact, in 2022, 2023, there was £1.7 billion put into our road network. And that's going to fix 7 million potholes. Well, the size of the problem is nearly £17 billion. And reality is that councils, some of the councils, my local council here in West Northamptonshire has got over a £300 million backlog. So an extra small amount of money from central government isn't going to do anything. The network's failing, it's getting older. And the cost of repairs, because every time someone repairs a vehicle, government get VAT on that, don't they?
Yeah, well, you would think they would be happy with that, wouldn't you? The Asphalt Industry Alliance have said this, basically, to fix every pothole in Britain would mean filling in one every 18 seconds every day for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a colossal task. As I said before, Mike, the answer it's wasting money. We see poor quality repairs. Everybody sees what the standard of the works, and I've argued that there should be every operative who works on our roads should be trained to fit potholes. I mean, there isn't actually a national standard in terms of getting people trained up to do the job right and having the right materials. We see a lot of waste. There's hundreds of millions of pounds being wasted each year through poor application. Resurfacing our roads is the real answer, because the lifespan of a road is about 20 to 30 years. Most of ours are getting up to 90, as you see in that report. And unless government invests an extra £3 billion index-linked annually to a resurfacing programme, we ever see any difference. But it's absurd when you see ministers going out to Derbyshire, criticising Derbyshire, because it is one of the worst places, I accept that.
Right.
But Nottinghamshire ain't that far behind, you know, and they're good at blowing their trumpet, and it's all about the last 14 years. Yes, the Conservatives didn't help, but the actual backlog doubled in the 10 years from the year 2000 to 2010 under Labour. So they've got nothing to go on about. To be honest, as I said, I think some people that write this for these politicians, I think they're right. It must be Hans Christian Andersen, because they're all fairy tales.
Well, indeed. Speaking of which, let's have a Keir Starmer clip. This is what he said a couple of weeks ago on potholes.
This is pothole damage. You can see it, hit a pothole and it just ruins the sidewalk.
I picture a pothole. If it's strong enough to basically, yes, it will be.
I've lost at least 3 tyres down to potholes twice in 2 months.
First thing we need to do is get a bit of accountability into it to know which councils are doing what where, how many times they're filling in holes, so we can get a bit of data on that, which we haven't got. But what we're announcing today is to incentivise them to get on and do it.
We obviously have customers day in, day out coming in with the same issues, and I think having spoken to a man who can actually, you know, bring change and make something happen about it, you know, that can only be a positive thing for him to come in and see it in real terms.
I had to change all of my tyres at the end, and it's quite nice that we see things done to fill in the potholes at the moment.
So he promises to collect a load of data on potholes. Has he started doing that yet, do you know?
I mean, I cringe, really. There's loads of data. I've used AI showing exactly what the details are. They probably do know what they need to do. They just haven't got the...
Has anyone from the government been in touch with you?
No, I mean...
Because you're the nationwide expert.
Yeah, but I've done some work. My evidence is all in part of the Transport Select Committee inquiry that Lillian Greenwood, the current Future Roads Minister, was the chair of the Select Committee. It was a brilliant chair of the Select Committee. All the answers are in that report. All my suggestions are still valid, and I really had great hopes that she'd make some difference. But I think it's they get in power, and then suddenly reality is there, and they can't do this, they can't do that. No, they won't engage with me. Several media people are trying to get to have a bit of a debate with me, but they won't come near me because, unfortunately, I can blow holes in the lies and statistics because I know more of it. I've met some of their advisors, and no wonder we're in the state we are, because some of these political advisors, to be honest, ain't worth a light.
No, they've never been outside Westminster. Never mind outside of London, you know, because I drive down in Sussex quite a bit, and what I would say to you, and you probably say this is happening everywhere, is that a lot of the main trunk roads are actually in pretty good shape, but it's the smaller roads, which are the roads that people drive on all the time, it's where they live, is where a lot of the damage is.
It is, you're right, and there's a report showing that in some cases, I think some authorities the last financial year didn't spend any money maintaining particular roads.
Right.
I mean, it's a nonsense. It's become an international embarrassment. I've done some stuff with French television. Later this month, I'm doing something with a substantial American broadcaster that looks like, because there's a big interest. I've actually retired during all the campaign I used to, Mike. I can't afford to do it anymore. However, I'm still watching.
Good.
I will make comments at appropriate times, and I think because of the local elections, it was an appropriate time.
Yes.
But I don't think government. I've got to think no one's watching over their shoulder, because I'm watching everything.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to you for a proper summation, perhaps after the elections, as to what they're supposedly going to do, what they have done, and what they won't do. But it's good to see you back in action, Mark. Very good to see you again, Mr. Pothole, Mark Morell, a man who has led a one-man campaign for years. Basically, he's been doing it. We've been talking to him for many years here at Talk. And it's a shame that the government doesn't want to talk to him, because he's the man that knows exactly what is going on. My road in Doncaster, says Colin, looks like it's been hit by a cluster bomb unit, while the council wastes money on a cycle lane that hardly anyone uses. It gives 23 million to Sheffield for their trams. Bloody ridiculous, isn't it? How about this from Kev the Red in Stafford? Mike, yesterday I saw a council team of 4 road workers using a mini digger to clear a footpath about 400 yards long of excess grass and soil that had narrowed the path by 50%. Great, you would think, especially as it was alongside a major trunk road. Trouble is, it's a footpath that about 3 people a year might walk on. It's not a route people walk to or from anywhere. Meanwhile, in the same county, we have thousands of unrepaired potholes. Council efficiency, my backside. Absolutely incredible. And one here from Anna in Surrey. I'm currently paying £46 a month to South East Water. Last week they sent me a statement saying that it should be £135 a month to cover my expected usage. I ignored it. Yesterday they rang me for a chat. I terminated the call. I refused to pay any more for greedy shareholders. How can it be £135 a month for water? I mean, you know, you can buy beer for less than that and have a bath in it. I mean, that's ridiculous. Incredible. Isn't it? Anyway, listen, coming up in the next hour, Esther McVeigh is going to be here. We'll be talking to her about the inflation figures and what she makes of them, but also talk to Lord Daniel Hannan. He's got a big column in The Sun today on page 10 where he's talking about the European Union and Keir Starmer's wish to get us closer to it. Well, we don't want it. Thanks very much indeed. This is Talk. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a $5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a House of Mirrors, where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 2 minutes past 8 and very nearly coming up to 3 minutes past 8. It's very windy out there today for some reason, and it's not particularly warm, but at least it's not pouring with rain like it was yesterday. We'll keep you updated on that, of course. They say we're going to have a very wet and soggy Easter. They're also going to pick up 1,100 miles worth of cones, apparently, off the road so that you can drive with a bit less difficulty, shall we say. That's all coming up a day after tomorrow, of course. Good Friday is going to be very, very busy as a travel day. We'll be here, of course, as ever, with Morning Glory. We'll also be here on Easter Monday as well, because we don't believe in taking bank holidays off. Bank holidays are for wimps, I'm afraid. That's what I would say. We'll be here bringing you all the news that you need and opinions that you won't hear anywhere else. Coming up in this hour, Esther McVeigh's here. We'll be asking her about the annual rate of inflation, because seemingly none of you, and I agree with all of you, by the way, are buying the fact that inflation has gone down to 2.6% from the Office of National Statistics. They said that it was 2.8% back in February, and it's literally dropped by 0.2%. I'm not having it either, because the amount of stuff that's gone up in price is ludicrously high in terms of things like the water bills, people telling me about beer prices. One text I've got here from Pete, who says, Mike, have you seen the latest inflation basket? He has stuff like virtual reality headsets in it. That says it all to me. Exactly right. I'm getting so much information from you, the great listeners and viewers of this show, who are telling me that prices are going literally through the roof. Don't worry about just what's going on in the supermarkets, but even in things like utilities, water bills, electricity bills, they're all going through the roof. Sky-high prices, 47% up. 56% up. Council tax, 20% up. I mean, come off it. How can inflation be 2.6%? I'm not buying it. Meanwhile, there's a summer of discontent coming, I'm afraid. You're going to be very unhappy to hear this, but I'm afraid it looks like the unions are taking over again. It's back to the 70s. We're going to have more 3-day weeks. We're going to have more blackouts. We're going to have more candlelight dinners. We're going to have more of all of the same, of the strikes that we're seeing in Birmingham. The bin men are on strike there because of about 40 people that can't see their way through to do a deal with the Birmingham City Council. We're going to see NHS strikes. There's one in Nottingham going on already. We're going to see teacher strikes. We're going to see rail strikes. We're going to be seeing strikes in the NHS. It's all going to be happening because the militant unions are back, and they have decided that they run the country, and the Labour government are not going to put their foot in the way of that. They're just going to roll right over and give them all the money that they're asking for. Angela Rayner's about to give them even more powers, believe it or not. 0344 499 1000 is the number. One story we haven't mentioned, by the way, Prince Harry's not talking to his dad, the King. I'm sure that's probably down to the King. He doesn't want to talk to Harry either. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Steve says this, I did our usual Tesco shop yesterday. Now, bill for the same basket as a couple of weeks ago was well over 10% higher. We're being lied to by the ONS and the government, and/or we're being ripped off by retailers. I'd be interested to see Tesco's next profit figures. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I think the trouble is that most shops, if they are trying to make money or they're trying to make amends for the government putting up national insurance at the minimum wage, they're going to lob on a load more price increases because they need to keep making the same money they made last year. And it's just the way business works. So effectively, the government has increased the cost of running a shop, the cost of running a business, so those prices are going to be passed straight on to you, the hapless customer. Let's get a voice note from Steve on Potholes.
Morning, Mike. This is Stephen Harts. This whole pothole thing is absolutely absurd. Where I live, they've just put in dozens of new speed bumps. They closed off the roads for weeks on end to put all these speed bumps in and narrow the pavements. The amount of asphalt that they've used could have filled every pothole in town. And it's like driving on the surface of the moon where I live. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is a choice made by the local authority to use the asphalt for speed bumps instead of filling potholes.
Yeah, you don't want a Land Rover so much as you now want one of those Mars Rovers, don't you, with about the 15 wheels and Caterpillar tracks so that you can actually get down to the local shop where you're going to get ripped off to the tune of thousands of pounds. Boudica says this, posh chicken Kiev from Asda, $3.99 a couple of days ago, now $4.48. This is unreal. Let's talk to Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense, of course, but very, very still much in command of it. Esther, very good morning to you.
Morning. Oh, you've painted a happy picture this morning, Mike.
Listen, I come in every morning full of the joys of spring. You can ask my producer, Christian. We always have a good laugh. And as soon as we start reading the news, we go, oh, for God's sake. And, I mean, the inflation figures has got us all going mad today because, you know, it was announced just inside the last hour, 2.6% in the month to March. Nobody's buying it. You know, I'm getting message after message from people who go to the shops every single day or every single week, and they can see the prices are going up. And if you're running Tesco's or you're running Sainsbury's and your national insurance bill has gone up by, you know, probably several million quid, you're going to be putting prices up, aren't you?
Well, I'll say this is the quiet before the storm. So let's take it that those figures are accurate, 2.6%. But remember, they've constantly gone up. So we're seeing this accumulated over a period of time. But then you think everything that is going to hit, those bills that are going to come up, like you said, the council tax, water bills, electricity bills. And when that national insurance contribution, that increase for employers there, feeds through, that will be an increase on everything from your shopping to going down your local pubs to absolutely everything. So those figures will no doubt be going up during the course of the year. So it might just be a Good Friday, and that's it. And then from there on in, I think it's a very rocky picture for this Labour government. And as you said, in hock to the trade unions, it is going to be a summer of discontent.
Yes, I think so, because there's no question, is there, that the unions are seeing an opportunity here. You know, they've watched what's happening in Birmingham. Apparently 130 of the striking bin men have actually come to an agreement with Birmingham City Council, but Unite is still holding fast with about 40-odd of individuals who don't want to do a deal. Now, I'm not blaming them for the situation because the council are probably just as much to blame for it, but, you know, these guys need to sort it out, don't they?
Well, look, you know, Starmer, the Labour Party, has had £31 million from the trade unions since he was the leader, and he is in hock to them. And if you think about all the promises he made before the general election, probably to them, the promises he made to the public, we will stop striking, as he gave that massive £10 billion increase to the public sector. But fundamentally, the trade unions see Starmer as weak, and they will be telling him what they want and how they want it. They're going to be changing the employers' rights. And to me, it's going to be like, while they're in office, it's going to be like Carry On at Your Convenience, the Carry On movie, and it's going to be everyone out. And that's what we're going to see. So I can see this spreading like wildfire across the country because they know they have him over a barrel. He will cave into their demands and they'll get the money that they want. They saw that with the rail unions.
Yeah. Absolutely right, and there's no reason for them to stop. But have a listen to this. This is a message that, like of which I get quite often. This is from Victoria in Kent. She says, my water bill just arrived from Southern Water. It has gone from £76.66 to £155 a month. Not sure how they can expect us to pay for this along with all the other bills. I'm doing all the right things in life, bringing 3 well-adjusted kids up, yet people sit in migrant hotels, probably having a lovely bath. Who would ever think you could not afford a bath? I'm beginning to think crime does pay. I'm so sad and angry. And so many people are feeling like that right now. I mean, I'm talking to families who are saying, you know, we're gonna have to cut back on showers, we're gonna have to cut back on water use, we're gonna have to cut back on the number of times you flush the toilet in the day. How can they possibly justify putting a price from 76 quid to £155 a month for water, for heaven's sake?
Right, you can't. And I have to say, there's one thing that Labour should be doing straight away, and we've said this before, we've talked about it before, and it's so apparent now. The whole world is saying, well, the whole of the UK is saying to Starmer, look, get rid of net zero. As close as you've got as a single bullet to bring all costs down, it would be starting with energy bill costs, because that basically flows through into every other bill you've got. So you'd say, get rid of your net zero, get rid of Ed Miliband, and let's start bringing costs down. There are things you don't have control of, but this you do, and we shouldn't be paying more for energy than anywhere in the world, because basically that is the cost that is flowing through to absolutely everything and pushing every bill up. And until he gets that into his skull, we are all going to be impoverished.
Yes, and that's how it feels. I mean, I don't know anyone who feels as though they're better off in any way, shape or form. And yet, you got Rachel Reeves' statement today saying, you know, this proves that our plan for change is working. It's kind of insulting to people's intelligence to say to them, you know, we all know that things are on the up, where things are improving. We're working to make it better for you, to get more money into your pocket. It's just not true.
No, well, Rachel Reeves has got the opposite, hasn't she, to the Midas touch. Tells us all about growth and we have no growth. She's now saying, you know, the pharmaceutical industry was going to lead our growth in this sort of Oxford, Cambridge arc. That isn't now going to happen. They're talking words. We can see their mouths moving, but it's not making any sense whatsoever. We're not feeling better off. Things aren't better, whether you're looking at the roads, whether you're looking at the bins, the strikes, the rubbish piling up. It is not better, and they need to see this. In fact, this fake let's call everybody back to Parliament on Saturday to talk about the steelworks and Scunthorpe was just a distraction from the other set of disasters that they're doing, which is not doing the grooming gang inquiry properly. We're seeing, because they believe in all of this, you know, EDI, this positive discrimination, they're so politically correct. We're seeing the disadvantage now that they're putting on white people applying for jobs, and they call back Parliament because basically all their MPs in the red wall seat said, you know what, we're not going to be voting for you, Labour. You are not listening to us at all. We're feeling impoverished, we're feeling disadvantaged, and you, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner are at the forefront of all of our pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And the grooming gangs, the rape gang story is one of the ones that really, really gets people going in this country. You've now been co-opted onto Rupert Lowe's inquiry team, if you like. How is that all going to work? What's happening there?
Right, so this, and he is I'd say a brave individual, Rupert. He's a very independent-minded individual, and he saw that this was not going to happen. Labour had already diluted the national inquiry. We were then going to get 5 local inquiries. That again has been watered down. So he said, we're going to do a proper one from the people to see what's gone on. So at the moment, we're putting the panel together of MPs. They've been fundraising to get the cases and the barristers that would be required. And we will go ahead with this, and we will basically show the failings and maybe some of the institutional sort of cover-ups that have gone on. And when we come back after recess, we'll be setting out the full remit for that inquiry. But it is so essential, even if it shames the government to do a full national inquiry, we will be pressing all of the buttons to try and get justice for those thousands of white working class girls who were systematically abused and raped.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you well with it. Kevin O'Sullivan last night spoke to another victim of the two-tier justice system, Raymond Connolly, who's the husband of Lucy Connolly. Have a look at this.
So it's just preparing. I was trying to prepare a proper defence for her to see what our best options were. But I couldn't get her home. They wouldn't let her on bail. I wanted her to come home and have a chat with people who would be able to tell her the best routes. But she didn't have that option because she couldn't get out of she couldn't get out of prison. She couldn't. So she had to just go with the advice. She knew I didn't want her to plead guilty. She knew I wanted her to go to trial, but she felt it was her best option to get home and see her daughter at the quickest possible. Lucy is very, it's almost like when she speaks to probation at the prison, their words are, look, Lucy, in normal circumstances, this is a done deal. You're low risk and easy manageable, but you are Lucy Connolly.
I mean, there's no question that this is not a woman who's being treated in the way that you would expect to be treated by this justice system. She's been 8 months in prison. They won't even let her out to see her children and her husband. And she's got another 2 years practically to go.
I've written about this. She needs to be let out of prison now. This has been totally disproportionate. We all know it was a vile tweet. She knows it was a vile tweet, and she took it down herself straight away. She's then thought, I'll do the right thing, I'll claim guilty. And look what has happened. This is a disproportionate sentencing. It is absolutely cruel that she can't go and see a sick husband and a child. People who are in prison for physical violence are getting better treatment than she is getting for posting a tweet up. So when people talk about a two-tier justice system, when they're talking about two-tier policing system, they have got examples of that here and now. Because why is it easier to go after after somebody like Lucy than it is to try and do proper police work and find other criminals for, violent incidents, theft, crime, burglary. Perhaps it is. Well, it almost certainly is. And this is just wrong. And this woman needs to be released now.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you, Esther. We've got to run. Thank you very much indeed. Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense, still an MP for Common Sense. This, of course, is the home of Common Sense. Coming up, we're going to speak to Lord Daniel Hannan. This is Talk.
We know from J.D. Vance and others the view of Europe that's held in the White House at the moment, and I think stand fast the UK. I think Trump's view of Europe is pretty dim as well. But to allow it to influence his thinking in such an important thing of war and peace in Europe, it is pretty shocking. And I suppose the final thing here, Julia, as you've alluded to, he is trying to do a deal. Unfortunately, deals in real estate are different from deals in peace and war.
Who knew?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:21. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here then. We've been talking this morning about the problem with the European Union. Keir Starmer, the front page of the Telegraph, wants to have an EU reset, which might risk a US trade deal. Basically, he wants to do a partnership on food and agriculture standards. But, of course, once he gets back into the EU, which is what he's effectively trying to do, then where does it end? We need to ask an expert. Lord Daniel Hannan is here. He's written a piece in The Sun this morning, page 10, about how the EU doesn't care about our food safety, just the £40 billion we spend importing it. Daniel, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Mike.
Very good to see you. I mean, slightly worrying, this Keir Starmer manoeuvre, isn't it? Because we know that this is a man who wanted to have a second referendum. He was never happy about Brexit in the first place, despite the fact that he says he doesn't want to rejoin the European Union. He's going a funny way about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is driven by a perceived need to atone for the sin of the referendum. And that, if you think about it, is the worst possible mindset in which to enter negotiations. The reality is, although you wouldn't think it listening to ministers, we've got a remarkably comprehensive trade deal with the EU already. Zero tariffs, zero quotas. It is the most comprehensive deal they've done with any country that isn't either a member or in the process of becoming a member. What we don't have is a deal with the United States. which is our biggest market. It is the US as an export destination for us is the same size as our second, third, and fourth markets put together, which is Germany, Ireland, and the Netherlands, nearly the same size as the second, third, fourth, and fifth put together. So that's what we should be prioritizing. The US, India, our new trading partners in the Pacific, not the relatively stagnant and declining trade bloc, which is, yes, on our doorstep, but with which, to repeat, we already have a very good deal.
So what would be the advantage to Starmer then, apart from just being cozying up to his friends and his mates in the EU? I mean, what would be the benefit to Britain of making this a more formal or a more sort of detailed manoeuvre?
It's very hard to see why he's gone for this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am all in favour of having a friendly relationship with our allies in Europe. Their prosperity matters to us, right? Even if they weren't old friends and allies, which I think they are, we still want to have rich people next door because they make better customers, right? So we have an interest in the security and prosperity of Europe. But this particular maneuver that he's coming out with, I think it's really important for your listeners to understand what's being suggested here. There's a perfectly reasonable case for allying or copying EU standards on an issue-by-issue basis when we think that there are savings or economies of scale, when we think it's simpler. That is not what is being proposed. What's being proposed is that we should give Brussels a permanent and open-ended right to set our food safety standards in perpetuity. Right? So we've been arguing as a country ever since the Brexit decision. We've been arguing for a mutual recognition deal where if something is passed fit by our regulators, Brussels recognises it and vice versa. And the EU, by the way, has that deal with New Zealand. It's not something it can't do. But the EU is not interested in that because they want to keep Britain as a captive market for their food exporters. We are their treasure island. We absorb nearly a quarter of all of their food exports. And what they really have been worried about from the start is that we might start buying food from other places like the US or Canada or Australia. And that's why they insist that we, not just now, but forever in the future, must follow whatever food regulations, however unscientific, however irrational, so that our consumers won't be allowed to choose more widely from global produce.
Yeah, and the problem with that, of course, is that it's all very well if those rules are reasonable, but if they dictate the rules, then they can make them unreasonable to us at any time, and we'd still have to be adhering to them.
Yeah, I mean, what the Americans, and not just the Americans, but the Canadians, the Indians, the Australians, and everybody else says is, why don't you, now that you're an independent country, Britain, why don't you just follow the global rules which are based on science? Why do you adopt these extra anti-scientific EU rules, which have been condemned by the World Trade Organization and indeed condemned by the EU's own scientific advisory body as economic protectionism masquerading as science? And it's a very, very difficult question to answer that because, you know, we don't produce enough beef for our own market here. Yeah. We do have high-end beef, some of which we export. It's premium labeled, and and there are opportunities, by the way, for our beef farmers in a US deal. But most of what we buy is imported from France and Ireland. I cannot see why we're prepared to pay this huge price, giving up regulatory control, putting ourselves permanently under the control of a foreign body that we have no say over at all, so as to protect French and Irish exports versus Australian or Canadian or Argentine or American exports. It's absolutely bizarre.
And the timing is even more bizarre, isn't it, really? Because if you were going to try and do something like this, you know, in the midst of a tariff situation going on where Donald Trump doesn't know for sure where he's going to end up. You know, he's threatening some tariffs, he's taking some tariffs off. You know, he wants to do a trade deal. JD Vance says they want to do a trade deal. Why do it now? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, so I've actually just been in DC talking to a lot of the people involved in those talks. My guess is that there will be a trade deal. Yeah. And I think it will be enough to avoid the 10% tariff. And let me say now, by the way, you might not want to hear this, but I'm going to try and be generous. If Starmer can pull that off, I will take my hat off to him, right? If he can do that, we shouldn't be churlish, we shouldn't be grudging, right? But it will be a thinner deal than it might have been because of this obsession that he and Peter Mandelson and the British Civil Service have about aligning with EU good standards in general and food standards in particular. And there's really no need for this. We don't export nearly as much. What we export to Europe is fractional compared to what we import from them. And any gains that they think that they are getting in terms of keeping the Irish border more open or whatever, all of that could be easily secured simply by saying, we are happy to recognise either EU or UK standards on our own territory. I think that'd be a really good thing to do, right? Have some regulatory competition. If we did that, that would answer all of the technical problems that they think they have over Ireland. But of course, the EU doesn't want that, because they want to keep us as their treasure island. They want to keep us as their captive market. They don't want us buying from the rest of the world.
No, it's a very strange situation. And your piece, which says that the EU doesn't care about our food safety, this is really all about just, protectionism at the end of the day, protecting the EU and protecting their own interests, isn't it? It's not about helping us, really.
Sure. I mean, we had the horse meat scandal in Romania. We've had, foot and mouth in Europe. But we don't say that we are at risk from EU food, because we basically think we've been eating it for 50 years and it's okay. And they know that is true the other way around as well. So this is nothing to do with food safety. This, right from the beginning, all of the moment that the Eurocrats accepted that Brexit was actually going to happen, they became obsessed with keeping us as an imprisoned market. And all of the rows we've had about chlorinated chicken and, there's more chlorine in a bag of salad.
I mean, I never thought I'd hear that phrase again, I have to say.
Right, because it's a non-issue invented to try and stop us doing trade deals that cover food. Hormone-treated beef, the Irish border, all of this, it's all concocted in order to stop Britain being what the EU really feared, which is a global trading nation on its doorstep. And it's very, very sad if we capitulate to that EU aim in return for, as far as I can see, what the Italians call fried air. Nothing at all.
Yeah. And just one final one. Since you've been in DC recently, I don't know whether you're able to answer this, but Keir Starmer wanted to try and set himself up as a sort of bridge to America from the EU through the UK. Did you get any sense that that's what people see him as there?
I mean, he's had to overcome a certain presentational difficulty with Trump, right? Trump sees him as woke, as weak, as anti-free speech, and also as a loser who's behind in the polls, right? All of the things that Trump despises. Right. But I have to say, credit to him, a lot of other countries responded to these Trump tariffs by announcing tariffs of their own. Now, tariffs always hit your own people harder than anybody else. If somebody else shoots himself in the foot, you should not respond by blasting off a couple of your own toes by way of retaliation. The Canadians have done it. The Europeans have done it. Starmer he kept a cool head and said, let's just keep talking. And I think that's going to pay off. And so, I'm trying to be fair-minded about this. If he can do that, which the previous government didn't, he will deserve a lot of credit.
Okay. Look, Daniel Hannan, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Good big piece in The Sun today on the subject of EU cooperation and closer cooperation, or as the Sun leader page says, Brexit surrender. Because I know an awful lot of you people listening to this and have been listening to this for very, very many years will know that this is not the way that the people who voted for Brexit want Britain to go. They do not want closer ties with the European Union, do not want our rules to be subjugated so that we have to do what the European Union tells us in any area. That is not what it's for. Let's get a voice note from Tony on migrants.
Good morning, Mike. It's Tony from Kent here. Like everybody, the frustration of all these bloody immigrants that are coming across, and there seems to be no stopping them. One thing that's amazing to me is how can the French miss 500 people standing on a beach, or even like yesterday, 700 people standing on a beach waiting to cross? They're obviously treating us like mugs. OK, great show. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. Steve says this. I live in Derbyshire and the roads are truly appalling, as Mr Pothole says. Travelling into Nottinghamshire is no better, but as soon as you travel further into Yorkshire or Leicestershire, for example, there's a world of difference. But they're still rubbish. Phil in Kent says this about the potholes and general UK infrastructure. What I don't understand is that even though the USA has a population of 340 million, about 5 times more people than the UK, they have to maintain the infrastructure of a landmass 40 times larger than the United Kingdom. So really, go by those figures, we should be on a winner if our tax pounds were being used properly. Well, yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? And one from Vincent who says shrinkflation is definitely a thing. I used to have to break my chocolate digestive in half to dip it in my tea, as a full one wouldn't fit into my cup. Now it fits. Rachel from accounts will tell me my cup has shrunk in the dishwasher. Great show. Keeps me sane. Surely she'd say your cup's grown, wouldn't she? Wouldn't it be the other way around? I don't know, just kidding. 8:32.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the Morning Glory. It's 8:34. Let's get a voice note from Jill on Potholes.
Morning, Mike. This is Jill from Leeds in West Yorkshire. I've got a good suggestion for the pothole situation. Let's fill it with all the bull the MPs are coming out with, eh? Maybe that'll do a rather decent job, I think. Thanks, Mike and team. Bye.
Jill, thanks very much indeed. How about this? Keir Starmer may be on holiday, but he's actually issued another tweet. This is within the last half an hour. He says, no one wants to spend their Easter weekend stuck in traffic, so we're lifting more than 1,000 miles of roadworks over Easter. And to save you money, we've frozen fuel duty and delivered record funding to fix potholes. Drivers, I'm on your side. I mean, do me a small favour. I'm sorry. This is the kind of thing that annoys people. They're not stupid. The Prime Minister can't keep issuing these ridiculous sentences as if they're true. He hasn't delivered loads of money to fund to fix the potholes because the potholes aren't being fixed. Anyway, listen, let's talk to David Davis MP, former Brexit Secretary, of course, and a man who knows a thing or two about the European Union, you might want to say. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning. I don't often say this, but I think I agree with absolutely every single word that Dan Hannam said on his previous interview with you.
Yes, I mean, it's a strange time we live in, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people say this to me a lot. They go, you know, I never thought I'd agree with this person or that person, but I actually do. And it's extraordinary. I mean, this morning, we sometimes take on a story and we never know where it's going to go. The one thing that's really winding people up today, David, and we'll get on to all sorts of other subjects, is the rate of inflation coming in this morning at 2.6%. People are sending me pieces of information from just their ordinary everyday lives, buying things in shops. Here's one here. Morning, Mike. I went to buy a plug-in air freshener last week. Usually it's £3. It had risen to £4.75 at one go. Needless to say, I didn't buy it. You know, everybody can see that inflation is an awful lot higher than 2.6 or 2.7%. And they're just not buying it.
Yeah, and of course it's a number just based on a formula, which doesn't, as you're pointing out, really doesn't necessarily bear much relationship to what people actually spend money on.
No,
you know? I mean, what's brought it down this time has nothing to do with the government. What's brought it down this time has been movement in oil prices, and literally we don't have any control over that whatsoever.
Right, and oil prices, unlike most other prices at the moment, are coming down, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's an international movement. It's got nothing to do with the government.
Right.
And since we've got precious little of our own oil now anyway, it's got nothing to do with us at all. Really.
Well, isn't it interesting that the government quite often likes to use the phrase, you know, the world is changing when things that are bad are happening, but they don't ever say the world is changing when things that are good happen.
No, I mean, governments, I mean, I don't think it's only Starmer's government that try and claim credit for things they haven't done. I've seen it too many times.
Yeah.
But there we are. The one thing that Dan didn't say, just in the midst of all of that, all that very interesting commentary, was the sort of rather obvious point, and that is that the European Union has pretty much no leverage over us. This is one of those circumstances where there's absolutely no reason to do what Starmer's doing, except what's in his own head.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sort of North London establishment who want to cozy up to the EU,
right.
And they've got to be a little bit careful, because if they do, I mean, normally it doesn't matter very much, but if they do so now, they'll do two things. One is probably antagonise Trump unnecessarily. I mean, sometimes you have to antagonise people, but unnecessarily. And secondly, throw away the single most important thing any country has to have today under the sort of dramatic changes going on, and that's agility, the ability to change your position very fast indeed, to, you know, whether it's a trade position, whether it's a standard position or whatever. And throwing that away for nothing is daft. It's just plumb daft.
Yeah, it does, and as I said, it doesn't seem to have any sort of sense to it in terms of the timing of it. One, because of the tariffs argument going on, and because of, you know, just why would you do it? Because why would you sign up to something which is a movable feast, effectively, if you'll pardon the pun, because they can change the rules that they impose upon us if we agree to abide by the rules, and they could change them so that we get a much worse deal somewhere down the road.
And Dan was right. Those rules are not designed to protect the public. They're designed to give trade advantage hidden trade advantage to the European Union. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But since about 1995, the European Union has used its standards not for improving people's lives, but for gripping trade and holding it under their own control. That's why. Bear in mind, that's why I walked out of Theresa May's cabinet, because she gave into it. You know, she gave into that whole plan.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we shouldn't make that mistake again.
No. And let's talk about British Steel, another rather ridiculous situation that we seem to have found ourselves in. An emergency debate on Saturday, which seemed all about sort of performative politics rather than actual real politics, it seemed to me. We don't seem to yet know. I spoke to James Murray the other day, who didn't seem to know how the supply chain was going to work in terms of coal. And if you notice, they don't use the word coal or coke. They keep saying raw materials, as if we're so stupid that we don't want to know that we haven't got any coal of our own that we could have brought in from Cumbria. You know, but they say, it seems as though Jonathan Reynolds, who's now transformed himself from a fake solicitor to the boss of one of the biggest industrial companies in the country. He's off to China, apparently, coming up very soon, because he's now gone back on his previous promise to say that China wasn't a good partner, to say that maybe now they could be again.
Well, I mean, the government's afraid of something else. I mean, one of the things that's going to be very important in the coming decades, frankly, but certainly in the coming years, is inward investment in the UK. And of course, one of the biggest sources of inward investment is China. This is the sort of thing where you want to sort of count your fingers after you've shaken hands. China's investment always comes with a state control element to it, just as the European trade arrangements have got an ulterior motive. All of China's actions have got an ulterior motive. And it was as plain as a pikestaff for some time, frankly, that the role of Scunthorpe in China's strategy was to be sacrificed to get greater capacity use in China. They've got massive excess capacity there. It's some of the cheapest steel in the world, but it's also some of the dirtiest. It makes more carbon dioxide than any other steel anywhere else in the world. And that was their intention. So it's got to be very, very careful with them. I mean, whether it's steel or nuclear power or our communication systems, you do have to wonder what Whitehall thinks it's doing sometimes. In giving into these things. They simply aren't thinking it through at any turn. And the truth is, we can find other investors if we're smart about it. We can find other investors, and this is actually not really without any reason of this government or any action by this government. It's found itself in a very unusual position. In some ways, it's one of the freest countries of the world now, if it chooses to use it, in terms of where it puts its trading relationships. Because of Brexit, it's got all those freedoms, and so it's a good investment location. All of a sudden, we've become, because of the turmoil post-Trump, we have become a really good investment location. And Trump obviously likes us. He obviously likes the king. He obviously has an affinity for Britain in a way that many other US presidents don't. Biden certainly didn't. And so we're a good place to put money. We don't need China for its cash, frankly. We should actually make these decisions on the basis of what's in Britain's interest, not what's in China's interest.
But isn't the big elephant in the room now, though, net zero? Because, as long as the electricity prices are as expensive as they are, and they are bloody expensive, it's not a manufacturing attraction in a way, because you've got to spend so much money on the energy bills.
Yeah, that is the biggest problem. I mean, and just to remind your viewers, I'm sure they know that we have pretty much, well, not pretty much, we have the highest electricity and power costs in the Western world, really. All our competitors are much lower than us. France and Germany by major fractions, a third or a half. So that's the biggest individual thing. And this is where I'm afraid reform got it wrong. I mean, Tice was talking on Saturday, we should have nationalised British Steel and it should be nationalised. That doesn't solve the problem. The only thing that will solve the problem is cutting energy costs. The only thing. There is no other solution to this. That company lost £400 million or just over the last time we got accounts for it. We think it's losing £250 million a year now. How long do you think the Treasury would keep that open if it was nationalised? 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the problem, James. And again, James Murray couldn't answer the question: how long is the government even going to be in charge of stewarding it for the moment? They're not really sure. They haven't committed to it. They don't know how much money it's going to cost. So it's a sort of open-ended problem at the moment. And I suppose, to be fair to Reform and Richard Tice, he would also say, yeah, but you've got to get rid of the net zero targets, and that in order to bring those prices down. You know.
Yeah, but if you get rid of the net zero targets and you actually bring energy prices down, you don't need to nationalise it. Anybody who thinks nationalising a company makes it work better needs to look at their history. You know, we keep hearing this. We keep hearing it about, I don't know, about railways and about other things. Nationalisation is almost never the answer. I mean, smarter privatisation sometimes. I mean, that's the answer for the water companies. I do some quite dramatic things there, but I wouldn't renationalise them.
No.
Because nationalisation just never works. The idea, I mean, that some 25-year-old in Whitehall can give orders to run a major business under difficult competitive conditions is just off their rocker. They really are, if they think that.
Yeah, well, that's what I said to him when he suggested it first time around, because I'm old enough to remember the nationalised industries of the 1970s, and it was pretty awful. Speaking of which, I mean, we feel very much as though it's going back to the 70s at the moment, don't we? I mean, you know, with the strikes looming, we're told there's going to be a summer of discontent. The unions are sort of flexing their muscles again, beating their chests, you know, getting prepared for some strikes in the NHS, in the schools, in the civil service, you know, and I don't know that Labour's got it within them to fight them.
No, I think that's right. I mean, you know, you bear in mind that you know, Binman strikes and so on were the augury of the end of the Labour government in the late 70s. So that's what brought them down at the end of the day. And you know, I'm afraid the trade unions have to learn a lesson that you can only pay them so much. You can only pay them a competitive wage, generating the sort of pictures you've got on screen now will completely loosen the support of absolutely everybody else in Britain that's not a member of their union, and rightly so. And you know, if we see, and to be honest, look at what's happened with the health service. The health service used to be the nearest thing we had to a national religion. Since those doctor strikes, the public attitude of the health service has changed quite dramatically.
Right.
So they have to recognise that, you know, we have to live within our means, we have to live within our economy, and just because you've got a Labour government doesn't mean you can print money. That doesn't work anymore. You know, that worked once upon a time back in the day, Bretton Woods, for a while, but even then it drove things to destruction. So it's you're quite right. I mean, it does feel like, I mean, I'm like you. I was working in the 70s, doing a proper job, you know, running a business, right. and this does feel a bit like that, I'm afraid.
It really does. And I mean, the problem is for an awful lot of the people who have now changed their view of the NHS, many of them have been treated in the NHS, or many of them have been waiting for treatment, and you know, they've seen that the NHS doesn't really work in its current form. Something massive needs to be done to fix it, and so they you know, it's all very well walking up and down hospital corridors going, you know, everybody works here as a genius and they're all wonderful people and aren't they all angels and let's all clap for them, but the systems just don't work. You can't get fixed as a health patient in this country.
No, I've lost constituents who I mean, I'll just cite you one example. As a man who'd had cancer in one kidney, he'd lost a kidney. He was due to have 6-month checkups every so often. He didn't get his checkup. His checkup ended up being 9 months late. They then found cancer. They took him 6 months longer than they should have done to operate, and of course it was too late. You know, and he died. And that's not a single story.
No,
there are numbers like that in my constituency, and every MP I know can tell you a story like that. And you know, at the end of the day, you've got to remember, public services are there to serve the public, not to serve the people who work in them. And you have to remember that over and over again. Otherwise, people lose faith in those public services.
Yeah, and
I mean, even this week, you can see the number of people now going to the private sector to get checkups has doubled.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
Yes. Well, I know people, because people who use the private sector are now saying, actually, it's getting pretty busy when you go into a private clinic or a private hospital now, because there's so many people there who are using it instead of the NHS.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I do, because, you know, frankly, I can't, you know, I can't sort of just take any appointment date, and anyway, I can afford it. So it seems no reason why I shouldn't go and have a blood test in the private sector, or go and have a scan in the private sector. It gives somebody else a slot in the public sector.
Yeah.
But you know, truth be told, it's becoming common. It used to be very unusual. Now it's becoming really common.
Yeah.
And I would, if I were running NHS, I'd worry about that. I really would. I mean, it lives on the agreement and acceptance and understanding of the public, and you shouldn't lose that.
No.
It really shouldn't lose that.
Absolutely right. Final question for you, David. It's great to see you. You're kind of the most senior Tory in the House of Commons now, pretty much. I'm hearing from people that if Kemi Badenoch doesn't make it through the year, you might be installed as a temporary leader.
People have talked about me as a temporary leader since I got in the House. I tell you, why do I have to be temporary? No, the truth is, it's not a job I'd want, to be honest. It really is the worst job in the world, being leader of the opposition. I remember watching Haig suffer through it, and Duncan Smith suffer through it, and so on, and Howard suffer through it.
Yeah.
So no, and I think, and the truth be told, I think she's doing okay. I think that this is a really difficult time for a leader of the opposition. If you stand up and criticise the government for anything, they just turn and say it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's 14 years of Tory misrule.
Right.
And there's no answer to that if you're a brand new leader for a while. It takes a while for people to say, oh, actually, no, the Tories didn't start the bin strike in Birmingham. The Tories didn't get into this mess with the Chinese over Scunthorpe. It takes time for that to happen, and so she's just got to get through that. And let me just draw you one analogy. I lived through the 70s, like you, and the arrival of Thatcher. When Thatcher arrived, nobody was sure. Even those of us who, I was a junior member, I was a photocopier on the team. Even those of us who were supportive of her were not sure she would succeed, because the problems are so big and nobody could sort them out. But she took them and she sliced them into little pieces, all these insoluble problems, and made them into smaller soluble problems, whether it was the trade union reform or the miners or the currency or inflation or unemployment, piece by piece. But it took quite a while. And for the first 5 years, we didn't know whether it was going to work. We really didn't. It was only about 1980. 81-2, that we thought it was going to work. So I think give Kemi a bit more space.
Okay. Does she survive though if the polls are right and they say the Tories are more or less a busted flush at the local elections? Nobody's really talking about them. Reform are probably going to take a lot of seats off of Labour. They've already split the Tory vote anyway. Is the Tory party going to be irrelevant at the local elections? And if they are, does that mean the end for her?
You never, as an MP, want to give away an election, as it were. But the truth is that these are really difficult elections to fight because of that, what I just said, 14 years of Tory rules, but hard to make an argument. The ones that matter will be the ones after this, in terms of the long-term future. Two reasons. One, if Reform win a council, then everybody will start looking at how well they do. Remember how well UKIP did when they tried to run council? Not terribly well, And I suspect the same thing's going to happen here if they do win one. Secondly, we've got to get time to have some new ideas in place. And the truth is, when you come straight out of government, you can't turn and say, oh, well, I'll do it differently next time. You've got to think it through, get the answers worked out, as Thatcher did, as previous Tory leaders who have been successful. They've all done the same thing, built a proper case. But it takes time. It can't be done in months. It takes years, I'm afraid. It took Thatcher 5 years. I don't think it'll take Kemi that long, but it could take 3 years easily.
Good to talk to you. David Davis MP, thanks very much indeed. Former Brexit Secretary and of course a senior Tory in the Tory party, but not really interested in being the leader, interim or otherwise, it would seem. Dave, on inflation, have a listen.
Dave from Chelmsford. I think you're a bit slow on this one. The inflation rate of 2.5% is for illegals, and there's a two-tier system for the inflation rate now. I think the normal inflation rate is probably about 12%, to be honest. Have a good one. Great show as usual.
Dave, thank you very much. Two-tier inflation. I've heard it all now. This is Talk.
Because we've constantly taken short-term decisions. It suited us to rush to China looking for investment. Actually, China invests staggeringly little in anything of importance here, except for some of our energy production, so, for example, nuclear, and they buy into these alien companies for a reason. And I'll come back to the reason why I think this Chinese company, which, by the way, you should know that there is no such thing as a private company in China. They are all absolutely dragooned by the government to do as they say.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:56. I'm Mike Graham with you until 10, of course. The final hour coming up very, very shortly. We're talking about inflation not really being representative of what prices actually are. John in Liverpool says, I moved into my new property in July 2024. My favourite biscuits, chocolate Oaties, was 60p. As of yesterday, the same biscuits in the same shop, 99p. Unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff. Let's talk to Tony Evans, journalist, author, Liverpool fan, and Hillsborough survivor, of course. Keir Starmer was meant to fix a Hillsborough law in place for the anniversary of the dreaded Hillsborough disaster, April the 15th, 1989, of course. April the 15th has come and gone. Starmer's missed his own deadline, I'm afraid to say. Let's talk to Tony and find out what's going on. Tony, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. I mean, he did say that he would have this done by April the 15th of this year. I know that some of the families have not been too critical of the Prime Minister for not making a deadline, but it's a bit of a poor show. I mean, he's making out that they need to get the legislation right. I mean, surely it's not that complicated, is it?
Well, no, it isn't, and it was a purely performative deadline.
Yeah.
They wanted to get it, the first reading through before the anniversary. But, you know, we've had 36 anniversaries. We'd rather have it right and go to another one. What happened was, a couple of weeks ago, one of the lawyers involved in the campaign got the chance to read the bill and was stunned by how bad it was.
Right.
That the two main elements of it, the duty of candour, which requires public officials to tell the truth, and criminalises lying lying about the work, was watered down so badly. It was basically a code of conduct,
right.
And there was no equality of arms, which allows people who have suffered a tragedy the same sort of legal power as the state, and they are unacceptable. And Keir Starmer was told in no uncertain terms that if it went through this way, he would have to remove the word Hillsborough from it, because we don't want it to be our legacy. And so they've gone away to think about it. And there are two views on that. One, that they're going to get it right, and the second one is they're working out a way to PR themselves out of the issue.
Yes, because, I mean, I can't imagine, it's a bit like sort of, turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? You know, politicians don't really want to put down in writing that you have to be punished for telling lies, because they do it every day.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really is. It's a big issue, though, because, I mean, if you look at Hillsborough, there were two policemen and a lawyer who admitted in court, that they altered statements and they misled an inquest about what they'd done. And they were acquitted because they weren't under oath. And we can't allow people to lie like that in senior positions. No. And it would be a massive breakthrough if the duty of candour got through. Starmer obviously is under a lot of pressure from various people, not least the police, but they promised it, and I think most of the country is on the side of Hillsborough campaigners at the moment.
Yeah.
And we won't go down quietly.
No, quite. So what's the next stage then? I mean, have you been given any kind of time frame for this reconsideration of the wording?
No, not at all. I would expect certainly they'll go away and think about it for a couple of months and present another bill, and then we'll see where we go from there. But it doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as they get it right.
Yeah, no, I get that. So, I mean, have you had or have the relatives had any opportunity to talk to Starmer about it or to meet him?
Well, Starmer had arranged to meet them on when the lawyer got to see the bill. It was a Tuesday a couple of weeks ago, and he's arranged to see the families on the Thursday. And the feedback was so bad that he cancelled a meeting with the families, and some of them didn't realise it was cancelled until they saw it on TV.
Blimey.
So it was a car crash.
Doesn't bode well, does it? Listen, wish you luck with it, Tony. Thanks very much indeed. Journalist, author, Liverpool fan, Hillsborough survivor himself, of course, Keir Starmer, surprisingly, or perhaps not so surprisingly, cancelling a meeting with the Hillsborough families because he didn't want to hear what they had to tell him about the bill, which he promised to deliver by this week and hasn't done so, missing his own deadline. I mean, what more can he do? One from Gary in Shrewsbury says, regarding inflation, there's a lot of price hike money grabbing going on, especially by the supermarkets. There's items going up by 15 to 20%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but inflation is about 2 to 3%, isn't it? Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but you can blame the government for that as well, because it's not just money grabbing supermarkets. It's the fact that they've had to put their national insurance contributions up, and they've also had to raise the minimum wage. There's a lot of people on minimum wage working for the big supermarkets. So, you know, what goes around comes around. It's all down to this government, who have not a clue about the economy or how to run it. It's as simple as that. This is Talk, back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people, because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Mega.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 9. The day is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. If you're not up and at them yet, you probably should be. I know the school holidays are on and you've got plenty to do and lots of money to be spent and you haven't got any. And what to do with the kids, it's all very, very complicated because the prices of everything are going up. Liam Halligan, says Andy in Notts, has been spot on with the economic news today. It was a breath of fresh air. Please can we have him on more? The guy is trusted and usually accurate. Yeah, Liam's great. We will get him on as often as we possibly can. Coming up in this hour, Baroness Claire Fox joins us, independent peer and director of the Academy of Ideas, of course. We'll be talking to her about the predictions of inflation and the fact that none of you out there, commonsensical people who watch this show, who listen to it on a variety of different devices, basically, you know, as well as I do, that the 2.6% inflation rate is a load of old cobblers. It's not anything like 2.6%. You've got water rates going up in excess of 50%. You've got council tax going up in excess of 5 to 10%. You've got electricity bills going up by over £100 a year, sometimes more. You've got every single time you visit the supermarket, the price of everything going up and up and up. How about this from Caroline in Norfolk? I've been buying the same creme caramel pudding every week for 2 years because it's my absolute favourite. It started off as £1. It crept up to £2. Last week I admitted defeat because it's now £2.25. I also started buying own brand because it was cheaper. That's all now crept up in price, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Well, this is the problem. You know, the money that people have to spend is shrinking, literally, before their very eyes. That's not the only problem, though, of course. Let's have a voice note from Reg on Potholes.
Hi, Mike. Great show as always. Reg here from Southampton. Regarding potholes, you want to try being a motorcyclist, mate? I feel like I'm taking my life in my hands every time I get on my bike. In fact, it's so bad, always feels like I've got the Grim Reaper sitting on my passenger seat. Anyway, get it sorted out.
It's true. You've got to be so alert, haven't you? I mean, even driving a car, I can't imagine what it's like as riding a motorcycle or indeed a bicycle, but you've got to be so alert, even in a car, because if you go into one of these potholes at the wrong angle or you didn't see it and you don't go round it, you're basically going to get a puncture, you're going to crack your axle, you're going to have all kinds of problems and money to pay out, more money to pay out, thanks to the fact that the roads, as some people have described them, look as though they've been hit by a bomb, a cluster bomb in some cases, or is the road like the surface of the moon where you live? Coming up, we're going to have a winter of discontent, so forget about the potholes being fixed, because there won't be any money for it. There's going to be strikes in the NHS, there's going to be strikes in our schools, the teaching unions are going to go all out, there's going to be more train strikes, there's going to be more train drivers on strike, there's going to be more civil servants on strike, we've already got the bin men on strike, those strikes are going to spread, there's going to be more rats everywhere, it's going to be absolute shocker. 2025. It's more like 1975. It's 7 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Steve says this: if Labour's plan for changes to wreck British people's living standards, destroy our culture, ban free speech, trash the economy, fail to stop the invasion and betray the Brexit vote, then it's bang on track and working well. That's a pretty good summation of where we are. I don't know if Baroness Claire Fox is going to disagree with that, to be honest. Claire, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, it does feel a bit like that, doesn't it? We've been sort of assailed on every level, at every point, and everywhere we go, there's bad news.
Well, I think that you've got a double whammy, haven't you? Because you've both got the economic realities, which are, cruelly biting on most people. And that's, a lack of jobs. Because, for example, the national insurance contributions have gone up and it means that employers can't afford to employ people.
Yeah.
And all of the things you've discussed, I mean, I have to say that the Tesco yellow sticker area is very popular in every shop because it's true that prices have gone up and people are queuing up to get the reduced prices because they just can't afford the cost of living.
Do you know what I've noticed recently, and it's only because I go past it every day, Bermondsey Tube Station, which is, southeast London, it's a relatively busy part of the world. In the last few weeks, there's a table, which gets longer every day, of food, free food being given away to people, and so many people are going there to get free food. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and I think that's because they're desperate. So I think that's a genuine problem, but I also think, and this is probably where I'm more... you know more about it. I think the other thing that people are feeling is the cultural assaults.
Yeah.
And when I say cultural, I don't mean, art spending. I mean, the fact that you feel that the way of life in this country is constantly demeaned and under attack.
Yeah.
The gaslighting, like yesterday when they said there is no two-tier policing.
Right.
And the whole nation went, what are you talking about? The fact that, and I mean, even when you talk about the trade unions, Mike, I mean, I'm less concerned about the return of the 70s. I don't think that's quite what's happening. But if you actually look at the origins of the bin strike in Birmingham, actually, if I was working on the bins, I might be outraged as well. Frontline workers had a massive wage cut. Birmingham Council is under, is under the cosh economically. They're the ones that were to blame.
Yes.
Because they implemented this equal rights law, this ludicrous thing that's not done women any favours at all. It's done in the name of women's rights, but actually has just been an interpretation of the law in such a way that the council now can't run services and workers are suffering.
And that's a hangover, of course, from Tony Blair's time, isn't it? Because he was the one that sort of put that all into play, and it all went to the European Union, and this directive was issued that they'd have to try and define what job a woman did and whether it was commensurate with what a man did, and the whole thing's bonkers. But I mean, that's hit every single council, and I agree with you that the council are definitely as much to blame, if not more to blame, than the actual people who are on strike. But 130 of the bin workers have actually agreed a deal. There's only 40 odd left from Unite who are apparently not willing to sign the deal, and I just think the government's now to blame for not making them do a deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of Birmingham, the situation is so dire, and this sort of rats running around situation just epitomises the notion of this kind of rotten UK. And people feel it, that things are so out of control and so vile that you're living in a country that feels underdeveloped. But all I'm saying is, in that instance, I wouldn't blame the workers, as it were. And just to go on the cultural point, if you actually look at the employment rights bill that we're about to discuss in the Lords, there's a huge range of things in that bill that are very scary, that do worry me. Like, for example, giving the trade unions more time off to negotiate equality settlements. So immediately you've got EDI officers for unions being created in a bill. I think that they use the notion of the old-fashioned "we defend the workers" to actually attack workplaces. And you've already been discussing it, but it's very important. This workplace banter bouncers is a disaster.
It is.
So they say to defend ordinary workers who work in pubs or universities or football grounds or wherever, anywhere the public are, the workers need to be defended against the public, and not the public going over and hitting them or, harassing them in a serious way, but verbal harassment. So you can be sitting in the pub, basically quoting this show, Mike. You can imagine ranting, everyone go down, did you hear Mike this morning? Having a chat, right? And the people who are serving you, somebody says, oh my God, they're talking about the migrant crisis. They're moaning about the potholes and Starmer again. I find that offensive. They can then threaten to sue the pub, the owners, for harassment by the customers, which obviously means that owners of pubs who are already under the cosh, despite Starmer going on the front of the Sun and saying that he supports the pubs, he doesn't. Everything he's done is attacking hospitality. But those workers can now use means that the pub owner or the university owner will say, we don't want the type of people in who are going to say something offensive. We don't want the talk radio listener in because they just the type who'd upset our staff, etc., etc. And consequently, they're trying to sanitize the public square of the wrong kind of people. So I think it's those cultural attacks that are really upsetting people and getting on their nerves. And
no, absolutely, no, I totally agree with you. But all I'm saying is that there is a sort of, even if you're sort of happy to park that and say, okay, well, let's hope we can do something about that. You then turn around and over here, there's something else to worry about, or there's something else that's bothering you, like for example, the price of everything going up, or you know, you're getting a water rates bill coming through the door that's suddenly gone up 57%. I mean, it's inconceivable that this is what's happening, and just life in general is difficult. And when I say going back to the 70s, I remember the 70s quite fondly. You know, I was a teenager. I wasn't, you know, I didn't have a particularly bad life. I had a weekend job, you know, but I just remember we didn't have very much, so I didn't really miss anything. But at the end of the day, we were quite happy. I get the sense now that people are quite angry walking around. You know, there's a sense certainly in the cities of this country that people are under the cosh. They're stressed out. You know, everything's tough, everything's hard. You know, and they're struggling.
Well, the reason why I was emphasising the cultural thing is not that it's like superficial, but because I agree with you that people in this country are righteously furious and angry, right? They feel as though they're not being taken seriously and their concerns are not being listened to, which is why it's particularly galling, as I say, that when you raise things like two-tier policing, there's, you know, the political class just ignore it, say it's not happening. So you're meant to feel as though you're going mad. Or they try and label you as, I don't know, an extremist of some sort or far right and so on. And so the frustration that people feel, I do think, you know, when you're talking about the trade unions, one of the most disgusting stories of the week is that the National Education Union, rather than concerning themselves about the fact that there's a danger of indoctrination in schools by government interference, that is something to be rightly worried about. The imposition of, say, adolescence, that drama series on every child for political purposes. What do? They pass a motion saying that the union, the education union, representing teachers, is going to stamp on anything to do with reform. They're called Reform Party, far right and racist, right? Absolutely disgusting. It's got nothing to do with them, right? But the main reason I'm drawing attention to it is if, as many millions of people are going to do, you're going to vote reform, your kids are going to go into a school where the teachers are more interested in telling you that your parents are racist far-right members than they are in educating your kids. And I think that it's not just the economic situation and everybody feeling everything's going wrong. It's feeling as though you can't even discuss it. Dissent is being demonised, if not criminalised. You can't have a conversation to moan about it anywhere without worrying that somebody's going to snitch on you and the cops are going to turn up and issue a non-crime hate incident against you. But that's why I think people are particularly angry.
Yes, but schools have been like this for a while, and I speak as a parent because I know from what my kids went through, and they're now old enough to be out of the system, but, you know, they were constantly being told about climate change, they were constantly being told about gender and why genders could be recognised in 72 different ways, you know, and it was relentless, and it wasn't just, you know, here's a lesson to teach you about, you know, sexual education, and here's, you know, it wasn't, this is up for debate. It wasn't a kind of, you know, let's talk about this, is quite an interesting idea. It was, no, this is the law, and if you don't agree with it, there's something wrong with you, and if you don't think that climate change is a massive issue, then obviously your parents must be some kind of far-right nutters, or maybe your dad works for Talk Radio. I mean, you know, it was as simple as that. That was what they were being told.
Yeah, and I just think that this is one step even further, because it's an attempt at distorting the democratic process. Now, whether you like it or not, Reform had 5 MPs elected, and all right, it might be 4 now, but there's about to be council elections. Democratically, people will be asked to vote, and a trade union is basically trying to set up almost like a cordon sanitaire around Reform, one of the parties that's doing very well in the polls, and say you shouldn't have anything to do with them. They're too dangerous to engage with. And that is basically trying to turn kids against their parents, because there will be many parents who'll vote for them. But you also raise the issues of gender. So if I could just do an elegant segue into what's really upsetting me today, which is, or the nervousness, which is in, you know, half an hour at 10 o'clock, the Supreme Court is going to tell us the definition of what a woman is. And it's terrible that we've got to this, but in this judgment at 10 o'clock is the most important legal fight going on for women's rights. And we're in a situation where 4 women in Scotland, a very brave activist group that started off really small and tiny grassroots and have now grown and known internationally, took the Scottish government to court, but this will have implications for the whole of the UK, where they basically are arguing over whether having a piece of paper that you bought for £6, a gender recognition certificate, means that you can count as a woman. And of course you can't buy being a woman. You can't biologically have any influence whatsoever by having a piece of paper or a certificate. But we are dependent on the Supreme Court deciding whether this is valid or not. And this is a hugely significant moment because it's nerve-wracking, because if it goes against For Women Scotland, then we're in a bit of a quandary. But what I think that we can say is it will have raised all the right issues, which is that the political class, and that includes the Tories and Labour both together, have got into a situation where they've rolled back women's rights by decades and decades and decades, by making even the definition of what a woman is a subject of controversy, and you can be called a bigot for asserting the biological reality of sex.
Yes.
It's a ludicrous situation, but that again sums up the state of politics. And I think the fact that you know that if you have this conversation in the pub after the Supreme Court and they brought in the Employment Rights Bill, you could be out on your ear, and the pub owners could be sued for harassment if there happened to be somebody who's trans ally who works in the bar. That just is why I think we have to pay a lot of attention to the attacks on free speech that happen at the same time as they're sticking the boot in economically to us.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. We'll bring you that decision, by the way, when it comes through the Supreme Court. Great to talk to you, Baroness Claire Fox. Brilliant as ever. Thank you very much indeed, Independent Peer Director for the Academy of Ideas. We've got this breaking news for you. British officials have confirmed a pilot scheme is being considered to deport migrants who cross the English Channel in exchange for the UK accepting asylum seekers in France with legitimate claims. So the one-for-one swap will enable undocumented asylum seekers who have reached the UK by small boat to be returned to France. Britain would then receive migrants from France who would have a right to be in the UK, like those who already have family settled here. So basically they'll take an illegal migrant, they'll put him over in France, and the same guy can wait there and put the new guy who's coming back here on the boat and bring him back. So you actually you're just changing people. You're not stopping people from coming. You're just bringing other people in. What's wrong with these idiots? What the hell is going on? Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Darren from Suffolk. Chilly morning as ever. Why do these MPs think the way to solve anything is to just chuck money at it? The NHS, you can chuck as much money as you like, but if you don't reform it, it will just waste it. And the same with potholes. You notice someone comes along about 4 months before the pothole and puts yellow lines all over the road. This one needs doing. But when they actually come, there's others that need doing, and they just ignore them. So they ignore them, they just do one. So they have to make 2, 3, 4 different visits in the same road to fix the potholes. Just do it all in one go. It's not rocket science, it's called efficiency. Have a nice day.
Yeah, efficiency is something that's very, very much in short supply, but very much like common sense. Luckily, we've got plenty of it here. This is Morning Glory.
She knew I didn't want her to plead guilty. She knew I wanted her to go to trial, but she felt it was her best option to get home and see her daughter at the quickest possible. Lucy is very, it's almost like when she speaks to probation at the prison, their words here, look, Lucy, In normal circumstances, this is a done deal. You're low risk and easy manageable, but you are Lucy Connolly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 9. I can't quite believe this breaking news I just told you before the last break, funnily enough. Now we're out the break, we can get some more breaking news. It's the same story, though. British officials have confirmed... Let me put it into sort of ordinary layman's language. Basically, we're going to take illegal migrants to this country, we're going to give them to France, and then we're going to take some people from France and bring them here. And the numbers are going to be exactly the same. So if we take 10 illegal migrants back, say, for example, yesterday, right, 700 people arrived, OK? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the 700, we're going to put them on a series of coaches. I don't know, say 7 coaches, 100. Can you get 100 people on a coach? I'll ask the resident, about 50. So Mark's the resident coach expert, right? So that's all right. So 50 people on a coach. So that would be, what, instead of 7 coaches, you need 14 coaches, right? So you get 14 coaches, you're going to fill them up with 700 illegal migrants. You're going to drive them to Dover. You're going to put them on a ferry, keep them on the coach. They're not allowed off the coach because, you know, they might try and sneak back. So you keep them on the coach. You don't open the doors, you know. They land in Calais. They get off. The coaches drive off. 14 coaches drive off. You get to an appointed place where there's French immigration, and you let the 700 people out of the coaches, and they're now back on French soil. And then you drive the coaches around the corner, there's another 700 people waiting, right? And you put all of them back on the 14 coaches, and you drive them back on the ferry and bring them to Dover. That's what they're going to do. I'm not joking. This is what the new immigration policy of this great country of ours is. I don't understand what they think that is going to be gained by that. And where are they going to put these so-called asylum seekers who are now allowed to come to this country? Are they going to put them in the same hotels that they were going to put them in, the other 700? Or are they going to give them housing? I don't understand how this is going to make any difference whatsoever to our immigration numbers, because it isn't going to make any difference to our immigration numbers. Oh, dearie me. I'll take some calls on this. We only got half an hour to go, but I think we should probably talk about this some more. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Richard on coleslaw.
Morning, Mike. Richard from York here. Great show as usual. Yeah, with regards inflation, I just don't know where they get these figures from. I went to my local shop yesterday, got some coleslaw, which is normally £1. That was £1.39, and the coronation spread was £1.99, having previously been £1.59, and that was only a couple of weeks earlier. So where they're getting these percentage figures from, I have no idea. I guess it'll be the usual Starmer lies, and just to show that the economy is on its way back, when clearly it's not, and only stupid people would feel that's the case.
And this is why we do what we do here at Talk, because, you know, you'll be looking at any other channel right now and they'll be going, oh, yeah, good news for the government. You know, inflation's gone down for the second month in a row. It's only 2.6%. What a load of old nonsense. Here's one from Tracy in Worcester. She says, great show as always. I have 2 examples of shrinkflation to share with you. Bisto gravy powder used to come in both 400 grams and 200 grams. They've done away with the 400 gram family pack, and the 200 grams is extortionate. Daddy's brown sauce, family size, 685 grams, has been discontinued. I refuse to be outdone by these extra levies and have opted for the catering sizes in both. Much more cost effective. Well, so you got a bloody great jar of that then, I presume, of Bisto, right, which is about yay big, something like that, like a barrel full. That'll keep me going for a while. And I guess you'd have to get Daddy's brown sauce in one of those huge barrel things as well. I don't know. In my local supermarket last week, my 24 pack of loo rolls was £7.49. It's now £12.53, says Tina. My usual pizza was £3.15 this week. It's gone up to £5.18. More money in my pocket, my ass. Bloody Rachel Reeves. It's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. Let's talk to John Dunn, Director General of the UK Vaping Industry Association, because apparently people are not vaping as much as they used to, and they're talking about the bubble bursting or the puff of smoke disappearing, whatever it is. John, very good morning to you. Sorry, couldn't quite hear you there.
Oh, so morning, Mike. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much indeed. The story I'm looking at here says the popularity of disposable e-cigarettes has fallen ahead of a UK-wide ban on their sale on the 1st of June. Why do you think that's happening?
Well, there's a couple of things at play. First of all, the mixed messaging that people are getting from both the media and the government around the relative safety of vaping, is not good, and people are confused. But also the industry has already started to transition away from disposable vapes anyway into more reusable models. So it doesn't surprise me that the number of disposables, or number of people using disposables, has gone down.
Okay, and what about pricing? Because I mean, we're hearing this morning all about prices of everything going up. I mean, is it inexpensive or more expensive now to vape?
Well, it's probably slightly more expensive to vape, but not a lot. I think what's really going to hit vapers is when the government slaps on a huge tax on vaping in October 2026, like they're planning.
Right.
That's going to have a huge effect and going to really affect those that are on low incomes that really need to come off smoking the most.
Yeah, I mean, there's always this argument, isn't there, about if you don't smoke, you shouldn't, but if you do smoke, you should vape. Basically, that seems to be the message, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and nobody who doesn't smoke should be vaping. But what we've got to remember, and this is the message that's getting lost, is that vaping has been the most successful way that smokers quit smoking, which kills 220 people every day in the UK.
Yeah.
And that message is really getting lost in the fact that young people are experimenting with this product. Absolutely, we should be cracking down on the underage sale. It's already illegal for anybody to sell these products to anybody under the age of 18. But frankly, the fines that are being handed out to retailers that break that law is ridiculously low.
Right. And the other problem, I suppose, is that if you've got a mixed message, which you have in the end, I mean, it's not your fault that there's a mixed message, but on the one hand, if you say to people, if you don't smoke and you don't vape, don't start vaping, that's going to kind of suggest to people that it's probably quite dangerous to vape as well. So therefore, if they're smoking, they might say to themselves, well, might as well carry on smoking then.
Well, and that's the problem. One of the things that the government should be focused on is educating people on the facts. And, people like to use nicotine. They smoke. That's why they smoke, is to get that nicotine. So if there's a safer way to do it, then they absolutely should be encouraged to do that. Whether it's vaping, whether it's patches, gums, it doesn't matter. But that's why we know that smoking kills, vaping doesn't. And that's why it's important to keep that message in front of people.
And when the ban comes in on the 1st of June, will disposable e-cigarettes and vapes disappear, or will there just be a black market for them?
I think there's going to be a huge black market, because one of the problems is that the government hasn't banned the importation of these products. I've told countless ministers over and over again. So it's going to be strangely legal to import these products into the UK, but not to sell them at retail. How's that going to work out?
Yeah, it's not going to work out well, as ever. John Dunn, thank you very much indeed, Director General of the UK Vaping Industry Association. We brought the news a little while ago, breaking news that there's a new pilot scheme being introduced to deport migrants across the English Channel in exchange for asylum seekers to come the other way from France. I mean, I guess that means you've got a double chance of now coming here, haven't you? Herbie in Harrow, let's have a chat. Herbie, very good morning to you. It's great, isn't
Mike,
it?
You make me laugh with this one, I'll tell you. Mike, it won't be long before the people smugglers be able to hire the ferries to bring them over in droves, in luxury, to give them luxury, I'll tell you.
I might as well.
It isn't going to be
How
long.
the hell does anyone think this is a good idea? I mean, you're basically not reducing the numbers of people. You're bringing people in. Doesn't matter who they are, really. And I don't understand what the point of it is.
Well, neither can I. What is the point of it? Why are you taking some over and then bringing some back? As I said, you're bringing them over in ferries, in luxury, and you're going to give them luxury when they get here. So what's the point? It's going to cost you and I money regardless.
Yeah.
We're going to be.
I mean, how about you cut out the middleman and just say to the people who are apparently going to be accepted here as asylum seekers, why don't you just jump on a dinghy and come over that way?
I mean, Mike, I cannot make it out. Whoever thought of this idea must be absolutely gormless.
Yeah,
I tell you,
must be a bit
absolutely
Cooper then.
gormless. You know, it's absolutely stupid. Well, let's see. Where's this supposed to be coming in anyway, Mike?
I don't know yet. This is all I've got. Is that the British officials have confirmed that it's a pilot scheme. They're going to start trialling it, I guess, any day now. I don't know. We'll find out more throughout the course of the day. I mean,
how can it be a pilot scheme, Mike? How can such a stupid idea take place and even start? For God's sake, what's the matter with it's time. We've had enough, Mike. We've got to start doing something.
I know. Well, and here's a clue for them. You know, deport the people that that come here illegally, and don't bring anybody else in. That's it. It's a one-way situation, isn't it? Good to talk to you, Herbie. Thank you very much indeed. Paul says this. Morning, Mike. Hashim Abedi strolling about prison like he owns the place is another example of how this once proud country is now rotten to the core. Our standards, our values, our societal makeup totally ripped away from us in the name of diversity, inclusion and tolerance. Little girls blown apart by this monster, and he's given every privilege whilst in prison, free to access hot oil and knives, which he uses to injure prison guards. It sickens and angers me, and many millions more. The whole thing is a sick joke. How the hell have we arrived at this point? And Lex says, morning, Mike. This new law about hurty words in the workplace is great. I can now have all those idiotic lefties silenced over their non-stop whining on about Brexit. I find their idiocracy offensive, so it works in my favour too. Keep it up. I don't think you want to go down that road, Alex, because if you do, everybody who says anything will be censured in some way, shape or form, and you won't be able to sign anything. Gabby says this, morning, Mike. Why is Keir Starmer signing the UK to EU dynamic alignment? Why are they also linking fishing to defence dealings with the EU? And why are they caving in to have ECJ oversight imports into Britain? When is Starmer going to put Britain's interests first, ruining other opportunities to strike free trade deals with other countries like the USA? What's your opinion? Well, I don't think Starmer should be talking to the EU about closer ties at all, because we gave a very clear mandate back in 2016, almost a decade ago, as I said before, to leave the European Union. One of the main reasons to leave it was not to be subject to its ridiculous rules and regulations. So why he would want to sign up to that is anybody's guess. But, I mean, if he's the guy that came up with this ridiculous idea about sending migrants back to France and then bringing more over, I wouldn't be surprised at anything. Let's get a voice note from Trevor.
Morning, Mike. With these new migrants coming over, I think it's very easy to see what's happening. If they bring them over legally, it's going to be very hard to deport them again. I think that's in a nutshell. That's Trevor from Harrow.
Trevor from Harrow, I think that's right. Stephen Leicestershire says this. The 700 they take back to France, then get on a small boat, come back. So we have double the amount of asylum seekers. It's true. What's going to stop them? I mean, this is like a revolving door now. So you just go, OK, so the 700, and one from David in Stoke. Mike, will they be sending the women and children that were left behind in France in exchange for the 700 men sent back to France? God knows. This is about the wackiest thing I've ever heard. I mean, if this is Labour's idea of controlling the borders, I mean, I've never heard anything so ridiculous in my life. It's 9:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Can't quite believe my eyes or my ears, really, this morning. We got the breaking news that British officials have confirmed a pilot scheme to bring migrants who have come here illegally back to France in exchange for some more asylum seekers who are going to come back over here. It's the merry-go-round of migrants now, apparently, as just been suggested to me. This is, of course, yet another ride for the British theme park in Bedfordshire. Unbelievable. It's not really smashing the gangs either, is it? Those migrants that will be brought back from France will be immediately let out on the streets and will be given social benefits and housing. You can guarantee it, says Alan from Peterborough. I'm totally sick of this government. Keep up the great work. And how about this? One from Sean in Bridlington. The illegal immigrants we take back to France will head straight back to Calais and get back on dinghies to the UK. Starmer has just doubled the number coming here again by making it even easier. I mean, isn't that obvious? What is going on? Incredible. Anyway, let's talk to Chris McGovern, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. We could do with some real education because we haven't had any proper education for a while. Chris, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, I mean, I'm not even going to ask you about this latest plan by Starmer to bring twice as many immigrants here as we've already got. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk about classrooms instead, filled with unqualified teaching assistants straight off the streets. This is a talk exclusive that we've got here. Apparently, there's so much shortage of teaching staff in these schools in our country now. We're getting out-of-work actors, shop workers, anybody basically that's got nothing else to do can be brought in to be a teaching assistant, don't even have to have any qualifications or experience of any kind. What's going on?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because according to the government's own statistics, the majority of staff in school are not teachers. They're support staff, and the majority of support staff are these so-called teaching assistants. And indeed, you don't have to have any qualifications to be a teaching assistant. And if there's a staff shortage, of course, you might find these unqualified teaching assistants teaching the classes. Now, there's a real problem here because over the last decade or so, the number of teaching assistants has increased massively. It's fallen off a little bit in the last year, but basically too many teaching assistants in our classes anyway, and there's a crisis in education. And what I would say, if you go back traditionally, you would see a class with a teacher at the front and no teaching assistants, and standards were pretty high. Right. So what you see today in Singapore and in China and in Japan and Taiwan and so on, traditional. Now we have classroom assistants, and virtually every primary school in the country will have one or two in each class. And what it means is that teachers can use group work, so they have what they call child-centred education. So rather than having the teacher at the front of the class, they have a classroom assistant here and there. Teachers are teaching one group, and the classroom assistants are teaching another group. It doesn't work. No. That's why we've fallen 3 years behind the Asia-Pacific countries. So actually, having too many teaching assistants lowers standards and also costs a lot of money. So it's a disaster.
Well, it is a disaster because some of the anecdotal information we've been able to get our hands on here say that basically they go through the obvious checks to see whether or not they're allowed to work in the school, so the background, the criminal background checks and all of that. But it doesn't stop people coming in who might be, shall we say, eccentric to say the least. One primary school teacher from South East London told us one day I was given a TA who spoke like a pirate the entire time he was in the class. It turned out he worked in Hamley's toy shop. He didn't make it past lunchtime. I mean, so there's not really any proper scrutiny of any of these characters.
No, I mean, it's an incredible situation, really, whereby no one's really well, let's look, Talk Radio is talking about it now. It's great, but it's been raised at last as an issue. The issue needs to be examined and it needs to be inspected properly. What impact are these people having on our classes, on our classroom? It's a bad influence. It's lowering standards. Yeah. And actually, if we got rid of half of the classroom assistants, we would save a lot of money, and then we could pay that money to good teachers and attract more people into the profession. I mean, the unions are meeting today. They want a better deal for teachers. Well, they can have a better deal for teachers if they cut half of the classroom assistants and actually give the money to the best teachers and to recruit the best teachers. But look, let me say, Mike, there are some good classroom assistants as well, of course. They're not all poor.
Yeah, no, in the same way that there are some good teachers and there are some bad teachers, but at least with the teachers, you know that they've been trained to be teachers. But if these are just people that are walking in literally off the street, you have no real clue about most of them before they start.
No, I mean, as you said, they have a criminal records check, but they have no talent necessarily for teaching. Most of them don't last long. Some of them only last a few weeks. Yeah. So, yes, they come and they go. Often, any Tom, Dick or Harry can turn out to be a teaching assistant. Some schools are better at others than in recruiting those sorts of people. Look, there are important jobs for classroom assistants, particularly working one-to-one special needs kids. They do a good job in that sense. But there's far too many of them. We want high-quality teachers, and therefore we need to pay those teachers well, and we can get the money from cutting back on all these classroom assistants. It is a crisis, and things are getting worse, but we don't face up to it. It's a problem.
Yeah, it really is. Let me ask you about another story that's in the papers this morning. It's on the front page of The Guardian, and it's coming out of the National Education Union's annual conference, which is currently going on, because it's Easter holidays, I guess. They basically passed a motion in which they declared Reform as a political party and an organisation to be a far-right and racist organisation, seeking to build on the despair, poverty and alienation in our society by scapegoating refugees and various other people that don't fit their beliefs. They've also said that they're going to commit the union to using its political fund for campaigns against Reform UK's election candidates. Surely that's out with their powers, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually illegal as well because they're promoting a particular ideology in the classroom. That's completely wrong. But look, if it wasn't so long ago that at the equivalent conference in Brighton, one of the teacher representatives it was actually a Labour Party conference, but it was a similar idea. A teacher delegate stood up and said, as long as a single child leaves school and votes Conservative, the education system is failing. The same view in the NEU conference today. They don't like anybody who doesn't have the sort of sufficient left-wing Marxist views. So they can. And look, our organisation, the Campaign for Real Education, is non-political. I'm not a member of Reform or any other party. But what I can say, there needs to be some freedom for children to have their own views and not be brainwashed. And schools should not get involved in politics. This is highly dangerous, and most people will not want this for their kids.
Yes, and the other thing they're discussing, of course, and no doubt we will find out more about this as the summer goes on, is there could be more strikes coming. The teachers want more money. We know that the bin men, of course, are already on strike in Birmingham. They might be spreading to other places. There's predictions of a summer of discontent. I know that wouldn't affect necessarily schools as much if it happened in the summer months, but there's certainly disquiet, shall we say, amongst the teaching profession, particularly among the militant ones.
Yeah, it's always been the case. I recall some of these union leaders are pretty radical, and they've become more radical. It wasn't so long ago when David Blunkett was Education Secretary, and actually he was quite a decent Education Secretary.
He was.
He went to the Education Union Conference, NEUT it was called then, and they had to hide him in the broom cupboard for his own safety.
Yeah.
That was the degree of violence there.
Well,
so
I mean,
here we have extremists in charge.
This is the trouble, and I mean, with this lot in charge, people like David Blunkett look like actually quite an elder statesman, quite a sensible individual, because compared to this lot, he absolutely was. Listen, Chris, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Chris McGovern, chair of the Campaign for Real Education. Actually says chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. I'm sorry, got out of the habit of saying that. One here from Paul, who says, Paul from the Wirral, just listen to your example about returning the 700 asylum seekers. It's absolutely driving me nuts, insane, because as you've just explained, they'll take the 700 they've just delivered back, put them somewhere, bring another 700 back over, and then the 700 taken back over to the French, the way they behave, then they'll be making them the next bunch of migrants who are going to be taken back to Britain. So it would just be a circle of the same people all the time, and a back door to eventually let them all in. Thanks for my sanity every morning, but this government is just driving me nuts. I can't wait to listen to your show at 6 o'clock every morning. I never know what's even going to be on it, the way things are going. This is incredible. Let's get a voice note from Mike.
Morning, Mike. It's Mike from Staffordshire. This madness from Starmer sending illegals back to France is only going to go one way. We send the illegals to France, we get, say, 700, we get 700 asylum seekers, and them illegals jump straight back on the boats and are straight back over here. We get two for the same price. Only won't be the same price, will it? It's going to cost us double. It's absolutely disgraceful.
It is mad. It's completely mad. It's bonkers, in fact. It's 9:48. We're here for about another 10 minutes. We'll take your calls. Bring them on. 0344 499 1000 is the number. John in Derby says, if these asylum seekers in France have no passport, how are they able to prove their aunt, uncle, brother, sister already live in the UK? Well, that's a question I've been asking for a very long time, because apparently one of the reasons why we allow certain people to come to this country is because they have relatives here. Well, how do we know that? You have no idea. Is that your brother? Yeah, that's him. And what's his name? Mohammed. OK, then. In you come. This is Talk.
We've had the suspension of bulk waste collections. We've had the suspension of green waste collections.
Can people just take them? All the suggestions from my guest bench of Potholes, can people just take their rubbish to the dump?
They can.
Or is the dump already full? I mean, our local dump, they seem to require for you to make an appointment sometimes.
No. Everyone has to make an appointment, but they have extended the opening hours in Birmingham twice.
Right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. It's the one place where you can get it, because there's an awful lot of it missing out there. If you've missed the breaking news this morning, we just had it in the last sort of 45 minutes or so. British officials have confirmed a pilot scheme is being considered to deport migrants who cross the English Channel in exchange for the UK accepting asylum seekers in France with legitimate claims. Now, I don't know what they're going to call legitimate claims, but what it's effectively going to be is a replacement scheme. So we take 700 people over there, we bring 700 back. Makes no sense to me. Steve from Church Stretton says, Mike, to me it's obvious. Take 700 illegals back to France and bring 700 non-illegals back. They will claim they have reduced the number of illegal immigrants by 700. Simples. Yeah, I suppose they could say that, but why can't they just remove the 700 and not bring anybody back? And then you wouldn't have to worry about it. I think the pilot scheme could work, because those paying to cross the Channel won't be willing to pay if they're going to be sent back to France. Love the show, and my bumper sticker says Gaynor in Bristol. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of them don't pay. A lot of them just get into hock in order to come, because basically they are people who are not necessarily able to pay, but what they then do is they become embroiled in sort of gang culture. They get embroiled in criminal gangs, and they pay back the money as opposed to actually doing anything else. So, Lord Reid, by the way, has started his summing up in the Supreme Court's definition of what a woman is. I think we can maybe have a little look into that. For Women Scotland is challenging the Scottish Government. Let's have a listen.
Please respect the dignity of these proceedings by remaining silent until the court has adjourned. Lord Hodge will explain the decision of the court.
The principal issues raised on this appeal are questions of statutory interpretation. The two United Kingdom statutes which we are interpreting are the Gender Recognition Act 2004 and the Equality Act 2010. The court is well aware of the strength of feeling on all sides which lies behind this appeal. On the one hand, women, who make up 1/2 of our population, have campaigned for over 150 years to have equality with men and to combat discrimination based on their sex. That work still continues. On the other hand, a vulnerable and often harassed minority, the trans community, struggle against discrimination and prejudice as they seek to live their lives with dignity. Lesbian women who have historically suffered marginalization because of their sexual orientation have entered the debate. It is not the task of this court to make policy on how the interests of these groups should be protected. Our role is to ascertain the meaning of the legislation which Parliament has enacted to that end. The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex? Or is a woman...
I only asked you what a woman was, mate. Come on. How long is it going to take? Oh, dear me. Let's talk to Mark in Swansea. Hello, Mark.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
Yeah, good. What can you tell me?
I'm a full-time pest controller, and part of what I do is look after some waste sites.
Oh, yes.
And the real issue you're going to have in Birmingham, if this waste doesn't go, is flies.
Flies?
People don't realise how quickly flies breed. So each fly will lay about 500 eggs.
Right.
So just take it. There's 20 flies that you see.
Yeah.
They lay 500 eggs each. And take half of those as being females, and they lay 500 eggs each. How many flies do you think you got?
Well, that's an awful lot of flies to me. There's thousands,
2.5 million.
2.5 million? Crikey. Blimey. I mean, how do you keep? Do you have to keep those sort of eggs and do you have to like spray them with something so they don't hatch?
Well, you won't be able to. I mean, the maggots will be eaten. I mean, you know, we've all seen maggots. Well, maggots make flies, and one fly will lay 500 eggs. So you put it through 2-3 breeding cycles, and the place will be absolutely alive with flies.
I don't even want to think about that.
The problem.
That's horrific, isn't it? And I mean, and also just the health dangers of all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the real health hazard that's coming down the track.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the weather, luckily at the moment, it's not too hot, but it's going to get hotter. Mark in Swansea, thank you very much indeed for that. God, imagine that. You know, 500 eggs per fly. And if you get, I don't know how he came to 2.5 million, but he got there pretty quickly, is all I know. Malcolm's in Oxford. Malcolm.
Hi, good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Very well indeed, sir. What can I do for you?
Now, the thing is, Mike, I think you are being disingenuous with our Prime Minister.
Do you?
It's absolutely fantastic. I'm telling you now, a drop of 0.01% inflation is fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, but it would be if it was true, though.
I ain't finished.
Go on.
I ain't finished.
All right, hurry up.
Because I'll tell you now, my Thames water bill has gone from £15 a month to £25 a month.
Yeah.
My pet insurance has gone from £1,300 a year to £1,600 a year.
Yeah.
This is fantastic because I got a pension increase.
Yeah.
£1.62 a month. Rachel from accounts is a brilliant. I don't know what.
Oh, I know. Listen, I feel your pain. I really do, Malcolm. Thank you for that. Very, very funny. Malcolm in Oxford, quite rightly, pointing out that, you know, nothing is going down in price. Absolutely nothing. How about this from Adrian? He says, morning, Mike. M&S rice pudding used to be 75 pence. It's now £1.60. Well, that's more than double. How on earth is that happening? Angelo says espresso coffee in Cafe Nero has got up to £2.50 in 10p increments from £2.20 in the last 6 months or so. I thought it was more expensive than that, to be honest. And talking about potholes, right? Here's one from Bill in Cheshire. Up north here in Cheshire, he says, it's like driving a Grand Prix. Cars having to swerve and switch lanes all the time. It's bloody dangerous. I bet there are no potholes on any of the roads in London that Starmer's motorcade drives on. Well, I've got some bad news for you, actually, Bill. There's plenty of potholes in London. But I don't know about Starmer's motorcade. He doesn't really go anywhere, does he? I mean, he goes from sort of Downing Street to the Houses of Parliament. And here from Louise in Birmingham, a 4-pack of orange juice used to cost £3.89. It's now £7.70. Insane price rise. I refuse to buy it. I mean, there's so much of this. There's more and more of it. Julie Hartley-Brewers here. Very good morning to you.
Very good morning.
I mean, this idea of inflation being 2.6%, it's just rubbish.
Not for food. That's the key thing.
Yeah,
but again, the point is,
then it's
when
not
we did
true,
11% inflation, that we've not. The prices have carried on going up.
Yeah.
People say prices are coming down. They're not coming down. They're going up, but at a slightly lower rate. But the key things that are going up are the things which people rely on.
Yes, exactly. There's no point in telling people.
Yachts aren't going
yeah,
up
well,
as
exactly.
much.
There's no point in telling people. Somebody was telling me one of the things they measure in the basket of inflation are virtual reality goggles. Well, great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but we buy those every week.
Yeah, I mean, the point
along
is
with the cereal and the milk.
Yeah, what's the point of having an inflation figure if it doesn't include the cost of everything that everybody buys?
Well, it does, but there are different baskets they use. But the point is they put in a lot of, they don't have DVDs in there anymore.
Yeah,
but
it's
they do
cobblers,
have,
isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah,
I mean,
at the end of the day. It's not a necessity. I don't really care what the luxuries go up by. That's not, people aren't relying on.
But it's just not a real figure. 2.6 is not a real figure. I'm more interested in this new...
You've seen chocolate Easter eggs and how much they cost now.
Oh, God.
Wow.
I bought one the other day. It was a ridiculous amount of money. It's ridiculous. What about this ridiculous idea? Well, two things for you, I guess. They can't even define a woman in less than 2 minutes.
I mean, genuinely, we've got the judges.
Couldn't he just have come out and gone,
Supreme Court
here's
in
what
London,
a woman is.
They had a hearing in November, 2-day hearing.
Yeah.
What is a woman? We've got 5